Alors, bon après-midi à tous.
Good afternoon, everyone. I now call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 151 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry and Technology. Before we begin, I would like to ask all members and everyone here to consult the cards on the table for guidelines to prevent feedback incidents and for the health and safety of everyone and the interpreters, who we thank warmly for their services. Pursuant to the order of reference of the House and the motion agreed to on November 21, 2024, the committee is commencing its study of the subject matter of the supplementary estimates B 2024-25, and pursuant to the motion adopted on Thursday, September 19, 2025, and the order of the House referring back to the 20th report of the committee entitled Potential Anti-Competitive Behavior in Canada's e-Transfer Ecosystem, the committee is resuming its study on credit card practices and regulations in Canada. As a reminder to members, today is an extended 4-hour meeting. So we will be going all the way till 8 o'clock because we've started late. So let's begin quickly. And we are pleased to have with us today the Honourable François-Philippe Champagne, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, who is here with the Honourable Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Thank you both for being here. And they are, for the Minister of Finance, it's Julien Brazeau, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister, Financial Sector Policy Branch. And for the Department of Industry, Philip Jennings, Deputy Minister, Innovation, Science and Economic Development, Canada. Thank you, Mr. Jennings and Mr. Brazeau, for being here with us. And now I would like to give the floor to whichever minister would like to start. Ms. Freeland, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. I am pleased to be here with you today. Our government takes the financial protection of businesses and consumers very seriously. That includes credit cards. Today, I would like to talk about 4 areas in which our government has acted in recent years with regard to credit cards.
Lowering credit card transaction fees for small businesses. In 2023, our government reached agreements with Visa and MasterCard to lower credit card fees paid by small businesses. These agreements came into effect on October 19th of this year. Thanks to these agreements, more than 90% of businesses that accept credit cards are paying lower fees and have seen their fees reduced by up to 27%. Over the next 5 years, these agreements will save eligible Canadian small businesses about $1 billion. And we're doing this while protecting and preserving the rewards points Canadians receive from their credit cards. For a small business, that is money that can be used in so many ways: to advertise, to buy new equipment, to pay down loans, to hire staff, or just to give yourself a little extra breathing room. Let me be clear. We negotiated these agreements to help small businesses. We have repeatedly stated that we expect all payment processors, that includes Stripe, to pass these savings on to businesses and are prepared to take further action to make sure that happens. Deuxièmement, nous avons annoncé une version révisée.
Secondly, we announced a revised version of the Code of Conduct for the credit card industry in Canada, and to protect more than 1 million businesses that have credit card transactions and debit transactions available for their clients. Since October 30th, 2024, the revised code has been helping businesses to compare the prices and offers of the different payment processors. Furthermore, the code is aimed at reducing the time that it takes for complaints that are presented by businesses to only 20 days. That transparency and ease is a benefit to businesses, and all of the main operators of credit card networks in Canada accepted the modalities of the revised code.
Consumer Protection Framework in 2022 to protect consumers by making sure they have additional and timely information to help with decision-making, including related to their credit cards. For example, banks must send electronic alerts when credit available on a credit card or line of credit falls below $100. Banks must also send timely reminders when products and services are set to renew. For products or services with 30 days or more, 2 reminders must be sent before the end of term. The framework ensures banks must also have policies and procedures in place to ensure that the products and services they offer to consumers, including credit cards, are appropriate to consumers' financial needs. Additionally, banks must provide certain information in a prominent way to consumers when they apply for credit cards, such as key interest rates and fees. Fourth and finally, to ensure Canadians can count on always being treated fairly by their bank, I designated the Ombudsman for Banking Services and Investments as Canada's single, transparent, not-for-profit external complaints body for the banking sector. The strengthened complaints body has had jurisdiction to resolve complaints at all Canadian banks starting on November 1st. Pendant trop longtemps, les banques ont pu choisir qui...
For too long, banks were able to decide who would deal with complaints presented by Canadians. With an independent ombudsman, which is transparent and has and not-for-profit, Canadians will benefit from more transparency. Our government will continue to work for Canadians and to ensure that they are treated fairly by their banks. And we are going to ensure that Canadians have access to affordable, quality banking services. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. Minister, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. I am very pleased to be back here today with my colleagues here at the Industry Committee and to be here with my colleague, Minister Freeland, to talk about issues that are incredibly important for Canadians.
And I would say a real pleasure to appear before this committee. Chers collègues, nous vivons à une époque de grande...
Dear colleagues, we are living in a time of great change. The digital revolution is developing apace and is going faster and faster. Climate change is disrupting our economies and changing the face of our economic landscape. And there are geopolitical challenges of all kinds in this world, as we've seen in recent weeks. That may seem worrisome, but there are also opportunities there for Canada to seize. Canada provides stability, foreseeability, and the rule of law, Mr. Chair. And with regard to the issues that the Minister mentioned, and also the opportunities for Canada, I would like to draw your attention to them today.
Illustration of this, and I think Minister Freeland said that very eloquently. They represent rapidly evolving markets where we can see innovation happening in real time. This is a sector that virtually every Canadian and every Canadian business depends on. That means that having a competitive and innovative fintech sector is not simply a nice to have, it is, in fact, critically important. I want to applaud the work that has been done by my colleague, Minister Freeland, in this field. And as you've seen, our government has been acting decisively and timely. With that in mind, I would like to highlight for you some important changes we've recently made to the Competition Act, which I think this is going to be the cornerstone of our government and also lasting possibilities in terms of bringing more competition in Canada, less consolidation, and better price for consumer. First, colleagues will remember, because this committee, Mr. Chair, worked hardly to make suggestion, we dramatically increased the resources which were available to the Competition Bureau. And I think colleagues should take comfort in the fact you've seen the Commissioner of the Competition Bureau very active with his office recently to really tackle the issues that concern Canadians. Secondly, through legislative amendments, and I want to thank this committee work on that, we transformed the Competition Act in a way that we have never seen before. This is the biggest single transformation we have seen in the competition landscape in our country. Those include amendments to the abuse of dominant position, where we significantly increased monetary penalties, which were previously tapped at $10 million. Today, penalties are now based on the benefit companies derive from their actions, and they can be up to 3 times the value of those benefits. Thirdly, private parties can now bring cases directly to the Competition Tribunal. And I think that's something that this committee has heard from a number of stakeholders, change that was warranted. Gone are the days where private parties had to solely rely on the Competition Bureau to bring forward a case. Together, these important changes have led to an economic ecosystem that is fairer, more transparent, and more competitive. Dans le même esprit de promotion de la concurrence,
in the same spirit of promoting competition, innovation, and affordability, I would now like to take a moment to talk about the supplementary estimates. As you know, the supplementary estimates for 2024-2025 is essential support for Canadian innovators, researchers, and businesses.
$1 million in these supplementary estimates represent more than just line items. They are vital for a number of communities. They are vital for a number of sectors. They're vital for a number of small and medium-sized businesses in our country. They represent our strategic visions for Canada's future. They represent an investment in our world-class innovation ecosystem, and they represent a vote of confidence in our communities, our workers, and our businesses. Mr. Chair, in Canada, we have everything we need to succeed in the economy of the 21st century, from world-class talent to robust ecosystems that make us world leaders in aerospace, the auto sector, biomanufacturing, and artificial intelligence. From critical minerals to renewable energy to market access, Canada holds a significant competitive advantage as a green strategic partner of choice. Even in an era of rising protectionism around the world, we're building bridges, Mr. Chair, sharing knowledge, and positioning Canada, our Canada, as a global innovation hub. Monsieur le Président, le Canada devant...
Mr. Chair, Canada has unprecedented opportunities to seize. They are generational, and we must seize them for the generations to come. But in order to seize those opportunities, we must be bold and ambitious.
That together we can and will transform today's challenges into opportunities. That together we can and will build the Canada of tomorrow, an ambitious Canada full of opportunities and possibilities for all. Monsieur le Président, là-dessus, ça nous fera plaisir de prendre les questions des collègues.
Thank you, and we will be pleased to take questions. Thank you. Thank you very much, ministers. I will now give the floor to Mr. Perkins to begin the discussion. You have 6 minutes.
Very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, ministers, for coming. My initial questions will be to the Minister of Finance, Minister Freeland. Mr. Freeland, what's the deficit this year?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Perkins, and this gives me an opportunity to say how glad I will be to present the Fall Economic Statement on Monday in the House of Commons, and there will be full transparency for all Canadians and all MPs about Canada's financial position.
Thank you. When you delivered the budget, you said it would never be, it won't be above $40 billion, and that there are guardrails. But we know that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said otherwise, that you're already through that, plus you've added more on the GST. So can you tell me, is the deficit going to stay at the $40 billion that you said was the maximum in the budget?
I'm very glad, Mr. Perkins, to hear you quoting the Parliamentary Budget Officer. He reported very significantly this summer that Canada's fiscal position is sustainable. Indeed, this summer he said that our fiscal position is sustainable over the long term, and that even a permanent swing of 1.5% of GDP would be permissible while retaining Canada's fiscal sustainability. That is really good news for all Canadians, especially entering as we are, as my colleague, the Minister of Industry, has just said, a time of real global uncertainty.
But as the Minister of Finance, you must know what the deficit is, whether or not, since we're almost 3/4 of the way through, are you going to stick to the $40 billion you told Parliament you would not go above, that was your fiscal guardrail? It wasn't going to go above that.
Thanks again for the question, Mr. Perkins. I do want to be very clear and assure all MPs and all Canadians that Canada's public finances are sustainable. Canada has the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7. We have the lowest deficit in the G7. Our public finances are sustainable, as the PBO has made clear, and I am really looking forward to delivering the Fall Economic Statement on Monday in the House of Commons.
So, since you've been minister, you've delivered a number of budgets. Have any of those budgets that you delivered, has the deficit come in as projected? Has any one of them come in as projected?
Actually, Mr. Perkins, we are delivering a far stronger and faster rate of fiscal consolidation than anyone predicted, including our budget documents, when COVID first hit and when Canada experienced the deepest recession since the Great Depression. The recovery led by our government's economic plan has been significantly stronger and faster than the recovery which Canada saw when the Conservatives were in office after the financial crisis, which was a shock, but a much milder shock than the COVID recession. And I'm very pleased that Canada is on track for a soft landing. Inflation has been in the Bank of Canada's target range for 10 months for all of this year, and interest rates have been coming down. That is really good news for Canadians, and that did not happen by accident.
I spent most of my life before being elected in 2021 in the private sector as an executive in a number of corporations as well as on boards. And if the CFO for my company missed its financial projections every single year, they wouldn't be the CFO for very long, neither would the public markets. So why should you remain as CFO of Canada, since you can't seem to hit a single target?
In the G7, and we are today reaping that positive harvest with inflation in the Bank of Canada's target range for all of this year, with interest rates coming down, with the Canadian economy experiencing a soft landing. And Mr. Perkins, you spoke about the private sector. The credit markets show they approve of Canada's fiscally sustainable position. If Canada were to,
I'll ask it
if
another way,
Canada's
Minister,
cost
since
of
you're not
debt were
answering
to
my
be,
questions.
I am answering.
If I could
Mr.
answer,
Perkins,
I'll
if I
ask
may
it a
just
different way.
conclude my sentence,
Sure.
please. If Canada were to pay what the UK pays for its debt, we would be every single year spending more than $9 billion more. If we paid what the U.S. pays for its debt, we would be every single year paying more than $11 billion
Minister,
more.
your
That
officials
is a
have
market
leaked,
verdict on the strength of our fiscal
officials have
position.
leaked to the media that the deficit will be $60 billion or more. So is it going to be that, higher, or lower?
Mr. Perkins, because a Conservative filibuster has blocked the work of our Parliament.
Minister, the only filibuster is your unwillingness to produce the documents.
No,
But I would ask you a simple question. Is the deficit going to be higher or lower than the $60 billion your officials have leaked to the media?
I think that it is very important not to cast any doubt on Canada's financial credibility. So I want to take this opportunity to be very clear that Canada's fiscal position is
Will it be
strong
above or
and
below $60
sustainable
billion?
and continues
Yes or no? It's a simple question.
to be
Why won't you answer
the
whether or not it'll be
strongest
above
in
or below
the
60
G7.
billion? Did you have your officials leak that on purpose to control
thank you, MP
the
Perkins.
expectations?
Your time is up. I'll now turn it over to MP Area for 6 minutes.
Thanks, the Minister, for coming here. I would like to place on record my appreciation for the tight economic management post-pandemic. Canadians, we faced a lot of pain due to the high inflation, global high inflation. That led to the record hike in interest rates. But I'm glad that the government held tight, worked in tandem with the actions taken by Bank of Canada. After 2 long, painful years, we are slightly seeing a better position in terms of the inflation coming back to 2%. I think in 2 days we'll see the 5th interest rate cut to hopefully to 3.25%. And the consumer confidence index is increasing, is a good thing. Mr. Freeland, I would like to ask a question on credit guidance to banks. I know post-pandemic things are changing. The globalization as we knew is dead. The international free trade is no more there with friendshoring, nearshoring, onshoring. We have to focus on self-reliance. And the share of manufacturing is still low. We need to increase that. The banks have been traditionally lending mostly to the real estate market, whether the residential real estate or the commercial real estate. I think combined together, they may be lending about 50% plus to the real estate market. With that, and most of this funding to real estate market is refinancing the existing stock, not creating a new capital stock. That, unfortunately, is not happening. And their net income is around 50 to 60 billion dollars the last fiscal year. Whatever our deficit is, in fact, their profits are much higher than our deficits. So my thing is that going forward, we need the capital resource is not infinite. And I think the government has to conserve its capital resources just in case another pandemic hits or if the major changes in the global scenario. And we need to make sure that the banks lend to new capital stock, whether invest in new manufacturing companies or new real estate developments, or invest in the clean economy, or invest in infrastructure. So, but the banks are not doing that. Is it not the time for us to go back to what Japan did post-Second World War, or the South Korea was doing till the 1990s? That is directing banks to invest in the sectors where that aligns with our economic objective. Should not the banks, I'm not saying that they should not make profit, they should continue to make profit. I'm not asking jack up the tax rates for the banks, no. Let them make profit, but lending to the economic sector that is required for Canada today and tomorrow. So my question, Madam Minister, is that do you agree that it's time for us to look at credit guidance?
Well, there are a lot of ideas in there, Mr. Arya, and thank you for your question. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for all the contributions you make in the many conversations we've had. I want to comment on two aspects of what you've said. Three aspects, actually. You are absolutely right that Canada's soft landing from the economic challenges of the COVID recession and the inflation and high interest rates that followed is the single most important fact of today. That has been a hard time for Canadians, and it is really good news. We're experiencing a soft landing, and our government has worked to accomplish that. Secondly, I really agree with you that the focus now that inflation has been in the target range for the past 10 months, must be on growth, and growth does require investment. Growth does require capital. And I think the focus of all of us needs to be, how do we get that capital? How do we get that investment so that we can have more growth and more jobs? And then finally, I think you're also very right to be pointing out, as my colleague, the industry minister, did in his comments, that the world has changed. The sort of end of history period that Francis Fukuyama described, that is over. We are living in a time of more protectionism, of more mercantilism, of more economic nationalism, and our policies do need to recognize that that is the world that Canada is in. I think the industry minister wanted to add a few things.
Well, thank you for your comments, because what I think you were saying is a framework of generational opportunities. I mean, you talk about the industrial base, and I like when you quoted Japan and South Korea. I would add Germany, but if you look at countries in the world over a long period of history which succeeded in creating jobs and creating prosperity, and being strategic in their supply chain, you will see Korea, Japan, and Germany. And this is based on a very strong manufacturing base. And you've seen that thanks to the policies we put in place with the Minister of Finance, we have been attracting record level of investments. I mean, 2023, Canada was the number 3 in the world for attracting investment after the United States, Brazil. You had Canada. If you adjust that on a per capita basis, we would be first in the world. And let me give you an example. The largest single investment of Dow Chemical in their 100-plus history was in Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta. That is their largest investment in their history. You look at the largest investment of Honda, 75 years of history, $15 billion, they chose Canada. You look at BHP and the Jansen project, BHP, more than 100 years of history, the largest mining company in the world. You talk to the CEO, phase 1 of Jansen and Potash in Saskatchewan was the largest investment in their 100-plus years of history, and phase 2 was the second largest. It's close to $20 billion that you've seen the largest mining company investing in Canada. That's why I would just echo your word. Stability, predictability, and the rule of law is an high demand and short supply in the world. And I think Canada stands out, and that's why you've seen record level of investments. And that's why we should celebrate Canada and our workers.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Merci, Monsieur Arya. Monsieur
Thank you.
Savard-Tremblay.
Minister. Thank you, Mr. Arya. Mr. Savard, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ministers, for your words. And I would like to take advantage of your presence here to highlight a number of issues. And I understand that through the motion, even though it was supposed to be only on the supplementary estimates, but there are also issues of interest for this committee. So let's go more in detail and range a little bit. So C-27, that bill, as you know, the study has been set aside for 3 months now so that you could propose a solution to those who oppose the creation of a new tribunal. And so there are a number of jobs in the culture and creation industry that depend on the bill. So I'm wondering, when will you propose a solution so that we can study Bill C-27 once again? Because we would like to see that go forward. Mr. Savard-Tremblay, it is music to my ears, and really for me and for all of those who are listening tonight, because I would really like for that to move forward as well. And I think that all Quebecers and Canadians throughout the country want that as well, because Bill C-27 is very important for the protection of privacy, because we want to give people more freedom to transfer and protect their data. And then, as you said, Quebec and Montreal in particular is a leader in artificial intelligence. There's Yoshua Binjo, the Institute for AI Security as well, that was just created. So yes, we are listening to the suggestions that colleagues have made, you and others, and we want to move forward, because I think that this committee's work is incredibly important, because if we want to continue to be international leaders in responsible AI, I think that we also have the duty to move forward at home. And as you know, the European Commissioner Vestager was saying that our framework is one that is a Canadian version of legislation on AI that is desirable, and that Canada's voice should be added to that debate. Question. So I think that democracy has led to a minority government, and then that means that there is more power on the part of the opposition than normally if there were a majority, but the opposition wants it too. So you're saying that you want it, but we would like to know when. So do you have some kind of a schedule that you could give us? You know what? I have more than just an idea. It's Christmas time after all. But I spoke to your leader recently to see how we could find time. So when it comes to the tribunal, I think that we have indicated to the various opposition parties that we would be willing to look at that so that Bill C-27 can move forward if we had a commitment from all of the parties. And I'm looking at the Conservatives around the table. If our friends, the Conservatives, were to support that along with the NDP, I think we could show Canadians that a minority Parliament or government in Parliament can work for Canadians' interest, and that in the area of artificial intelligence, that's the case. But we don't know when yet. Well, it'll be soon. There have been talks with all of the parties, but I know that you are an excellent negotiator, and your colleagues, the Conservatives, are right beside you. So if you'd like to take them aside before Christmas and sort of guide them toward passing that bill, I think we'd have it. Well, if they want to come out for a beer with me, then we can talk about all kinds of things. Yeah, let's go for a dance. We'll invite them to the party on Wednesday night. So I would also say that recently we were contacted by the Coalition of Internet Providers, and they were concerned about some of the provisions in the Copyright Act. And so we know that in Canada, an internet provider is not responsible for the copyright infractions that are committed by the subscribers. But if they get a complaint that alleges a violation of copyright by a subscriber to an internet provider's service, then really there has to be confirmation by the provider about whether the claim can be presented. So really, and it depends on when it's presented and how long it takes to be processed. and that can add up in terms of what has to be paid at the end of the line. So when there is someone who is to get some kind of compensation for each violation of copyright that takes place with a notice for each time, that would lead to millions of dollars in interest that would have to be paid by internet providers. And so we know that there were talks with the relevant department and your office. And what is your position here? Can we get a quick response? And I will be a negotiator again and ask you when. Quickly, please. Yes. Thank you for your questions. As you know, we launched consultations because copyright respect in online and in the digital world is very, very important. The same thing for patents, because new technology brings new communication media, but there are fundamental principles like copyright, like the law on patents that have to be respected. So we are consulting, and after those consultations, I will be pleased to come back to the committee with a position once we've heard from everyone concerned, because it's very complex and very important. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, ministers. It's good to have you at committee. Minister Freeland, I'd like to start with a question about the part of the world that I represent. And since you mentioned Haida Gwaii when I walked in the room, I know you're familiar with their unique predicament. Haida Gwaii is separated from the North Coast by a 100-kilometer, 7-hour ferry ride when the weather's good. Sometimes the ferry is docked for several days in bad weather. There are all kinds of reasons that people need to get off Haida Gwaii for appointments, for shopping, that sort of thing, and all of their goods rely on that ferry link. And so the cost of living on Haida Gwaii is extraordinarily expensive due to their remoteness. This is an issue that's been advocated for many, many years. And 30 years ago, a Liberal government cut their access to the Northern Residents tax deduction in half. And they've been fighting ever since to have it fully restored. It seems to me that during a cost of living crisis, when the heightened cost of living from remoteness is accentuated by what's happening in the larger economy, it seems to me that it would be the perfect time to make things right and to restore their access to that important tax deduction. Is that something your government is willing to do?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach, for your hard work advocating for your constituents and for Haida Gwaii, I think one of the most precious parts of our amazing country. As you know, this is an issue that you and I have discussed in the past. I've appreciated those conversations. I have nothing to announce today, but let me just say you are a very strong and effective advocate for your community, and I'm glad that we have been talking about it.
Thank you, Minister. Turning to Minister Champagne and something that relates to your department's focus and your mandate, and in the same part of the world as my first question, your department funded an important undersea fiber optic link between Prince Rupert and Haida Gwaii and between Prince Rupert and the rest of the North Coast, all the way down to Vancouver Island. The federal government invested $23 million in that project, and it's been installed, and it's in the process of being commissioned and connected to communities. Some communities have already been connected. Haida Gwaii was connected, for instance. And yet, since it was installed, there have been six instances in which the cable has been severed. And there's no redundant link. And so when it's severed, all of the communities on Haida Gwaii, all of those businesses, everyone who relies on that fiber optic link that your government helped create are cut off. And they have to use a backup connection that is much lower speed, much less bandwidth, is totally insufficient. So right now, that fiber optic cable is not functional. And the company that installed it, City West, which is a company based in Prince Rupert, has been trying to get your attention. I approached you at the airport about it. I've been working with trying to get Mr. Turnbull to look into it as well. I sat down with Minister Hutchings, who provided an update from the department. The update from the department was the cable is broken. we desperately need to get two things. We need to get the cable armored. We need money from your department to armor the cable, and we need a redundant link so that when one of the cables is severed, the internet connection, the connectivity to this remote part of Canada isn't also severed. Will you commit today to funding the project that they've applied for, which is to put in that armored cable so that it's not severed in the future?
Well, thank you, Mr. Baccarat. I'll commit to always be nice to you when I see you at the airport, and always and make sure that I meet the CEO of the company. That I can commit. To be honest, you've been describing a situation which requires attention. I don't have all the details, as you would probably appreciate, about what kind of remedial action can be taken. But I'm pleased to commit and to say to everyone watching how effective you are as an advocate for your community, as we should all be. And that I would be pleased, obviously, to meet the CEO of the company after the meeting. I'll share my number with you. Doing it in public could create a lot of phone calls tonight, but I'll share it with you privately, and then you can give it to him, and I'd be happy for him to give me a call, and that we will look into that with the officials to look at what is possible under the circumstances. But I appreciate you raising that at committee.
You did share your number with me, Minister, and I texted you several times. But
not
I
to
look
the
forward.
CEO
I
of
look
the
forward to
company.
yes.
But the
I would
CEO
be
of the
happy
company
to
will.
arrange a meeting with the CEO. That would be fantastic.
Perfect.
I know Canada's a big country. You have a lot on your plate. This is very important to the part of the world that I represent, and it's a project that has the potential to be a game changer for rural communities. But they need support, and your government's already invested money. Right now, they need support to armor that cable and ensure they have redundancy, and I hope that your department can commit to working with them and making that happen as soon as possible. It's vitally important that we get that link back up and running. I'm just looking at the chair, whether we're right on time.
Got about 29 seconds.
29 seconds, that's a tough one.
I can credit it to your next round if you want.
Okay,
Mr. Baccarat.
I'll put it in the bank and withdraw it next time. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, MP Rempel-Garner. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Minister Freeland, it's been reported that the Public Service Pension Fund will post a large surplus. Do you plan on, or have you booked any of this reported surplus against the deficit?
No.
Thank you. Are you expecting a credit downgrade will result from the updated deficit numbers?
Let me be very clear that I am not confirming the implication in your question. But when it comes to Canada's credit rating, it is based on the fact that our public finances are sustainable, that we have the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7 and one that is declining, that we have had the fastest rate of fiscal consolidation. Hang on, I do want to answer the question. That we have had the fastest rate of fiscal consolidation in the G7 and that we have the lowest deficit in the G7. I am confident that our public finances continue to merit our AAA rating.
Thank you. In your opening remarks, you said you would be prepared to take additional measures to ensure that payment processors like Stripe pass savings along to eligible small business. Does that include formal regulations with penalties to ensure compliance?
That's a really good question. I'm glad to have a question actually about this subject that we were brought here to discuss. Let me be very clear. Our government is very committed to bringing down fees for small businesses. We are very committed to transparency. We have accomplished a lot, and we are committed to doing more. And you know, every tool is in the toolbox, and we're prepared to use all of them.
Time you talk to what I talk, so I'll take that as a no for now. How are you monitoring to what extent payment processors are passing along fee savings from Visa and MasterCard to small businesses, or are you doing that at all?
Let me just say, your conclusion about what I said is not accurate. I said that we are prepared to act further, and that is absolutely the case. This is something we are very, very committed to. We are working very closely with the Consumer Protection Bureau. We are working very closely with the CFIB. We are working very closely with small businesses. We are committed that these savings should be transferred to small businesses, and they will be.
Thank you. Thank you. You also said that we're operating in an environment of more mercantilism. Do you have plans to permanently reduce tax burdens on businesses to make them more competitive vis-a-vis the U.S. mercantilist environment, such as eliminating the carbon tax?
I do think the marginal effective tax rate, is something that it is very important to look at. Our government monitors that very closely. We will continue to do so. And I do believe we have to be very careful and thoughtful about fighting for capital for Canada and Canadians.
So you will eliminate the carbon tax?
Canada's meter continues to be better than the meter in the United States. That is something we need to watch, and we need to maintain that competitive advantage.
Would you suggest that the carbon tax helps attract investment to Canada vis-a-vis the American market, since it doesn't have a carbon tax?
I would suggest two things. First of all, the small business carbon rebate is delivering $2.5 billion to small businesses even as we speak. That is a significant boost coming at the right time. Second of all, as Francois Philippe discussed, there are many businesses investing in Canada based on our price to pollution. The EV industry is one example. Dow, just north of where you are right now in Calgary, is another example.
The deficit is going to be over $40 billion. Is the deficit going to be over $40 billion?
I am glad, notwithstanding the Conservative filibuster, that I will have an opportunity to present the fall economic statement on Monday, and we will be presenting full transparency on the public finances.
Has the Prime Minister indicated to you that you'll be shuffled out of your role if the deficit is over $40 billion?
I think that's a question for the Prime Minister.
Is that a yes?
I was very clear.
All right, thank you, MP Rempel-Garner.
really,
On that note, I'll
thank
turn it
you.
over to MP Van Bynen for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Double bonus day. It's not often we get two ministers to our committee, but it's certainly a pleasure to have you both here. AI has been one of my favorite topics, and we know that the genie is out of the bottle. Okay, love it or hate it, there's no denying that artificial intelligence is here to stay, and its transformative potential is not only in our economy, but in the world economy as a whole. So what are some of the steps that you've taken to promote a fertile ecosystem for us to be a global leader in AI?
That's such a great question that Francois Philippe and I both want to answer. And I just want to take this opportunity to say how glad we both were that I was able to be in Toronto on Friday with a Canadian AI champion, Cohere, announcing a government investment in a Canadian data center. This is really good news. This is about exactly what we've been talking about, crowding in private capital to Canada, securing Canada's very strong position in one of the most important new technologies in the world. We have the AI researchers. We won Toronto's Jeff Hinton won a Nobel Prize in Physics for his work. Aidan Gomez, the CEO of Cohere, worked with him. And what we talked about on Friday with this group of great young Canadian AI researchers and people who've been attracted to Canada to work on this project is how now is the moment for Canada to capitalize on our AI advantage and turn it into companies and jobs and productivity for our country.
Yeah, no, thank you for raising that. I think AI is the defining technology of our time. I think it's the holy grail of productivity. And I'm glad to see that you may remember Canada was the first country in the world to have a national AI strategy. We were the second country in the world with a voluntary code of conduct, which was very much in line with what the White House had been putting forward. Now we have more than 30 companies. And now, as Minister Freeland just said, we have put $2 billion towards what we call computing capacity. Because when you have the brain, then you need the hardware. We've been working with Cohere. We've been working with some of the best in the world that we have, and they are in Canada. By the way, I would say that we should be very proud that Canada is seen not only a leader in AI, but in responsible AI. You would have seen that just the week before we did this great announcement in Toronto last week. In San Francisco, Canada was among the first country with the United States of America to create an AI Safety Institute to make sure that we would have a place that we can verify these models, that we would contribute to AI safety. And I'm very proud to say that AI, quantum, those are two key sectors. They are these technologies that will have an impact on every sector of the economy. And I think we're going to, like Minister Phelan said, this is a great way to bring Canada more competitive, support company like Cohere, which is crowding in investment, like she was saying, in Canada, and making sure that we'll have data sovereignty and data security. And that is something which is very much look like, because, again, in the world we live in today, Mr. Van Biden, as you know, a number of countries are looking as where to put these assets. And Canada not only offer the security aspect, but the energy. That is the work. When you talk to AI today, people would say, you cannot talk about AI without talking about energy. We are blessed in Canada. In many parts of the country, you may have seen Alberta, which recently sent a delegation to track a number of investments. You've seen that. I was just in Newfoundland and Labrador last week, which is putting a lot of power online. We have seen that in Quebec and Ontario. Many provinces are working to offer that kind of renewable energy. And I think, those who are going to be able to have both the AI in terms of computing capacity to store the data and at the same time have the renewable energy are going to win in the economy of the 21st century. So glad that you're mentioning how Canada is leading and the investments that we've put thanks to Minister Freeland and the vision of the Prime Minister to lead in the technology that's going to be defining some of the. I would recommend, if you read the book Genesis that was authored by Dr. Kissinger and Eric Schmidt and others, you would see that some compare the power of AI as what we've seen with electricity. And so that, imagine the transformation we'll see in our lifetime. This is really something that Canada is leading, and we're proud to invest in that key sector for not only this generation, but for future generations.
Thank you, MP Van Bynen. I'm afraid you're out of time. We'll turn it over to Monsieur Savard-Tremblay pour 2 minutes 30. La parole est à vous.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Alors,
Go ahead. Thank you, Chair. So I will be asking another question, Minister, which I care about a great deal, and I know that you care about it too, the aerospace industry, ArriveCAN and the famous strategy. No, I don't want to talk about investments. I want to talk about strategies and policies. So, I would like to say something. I want to highlight it, and you'll be proud of it because it's a nice thing to bring along at Christmas time. So in Montreal, there are the big three. There's a Boeing, Airbus, and Bombardier. It's exceptional. All three are there. And I went to see the employees of Airbus last week. And so really, it's in Canada that you can make an entire airplane. And I think that you were with me when the big meeting took place for the aerospace industry. And we are working on a national strategy for that industry. There are defense-related elements there as well. And we wanted to see how we get Canadian businesses involved, small and medium enterprises as well, because we want to make sure that there are good economic consequences for small and medium enterprises in Canada. And we are talking with the players in the industry because we want to ensure that our policy favors investment here in Canada and favors small and medium enterprises, and also will help us with the strategy to become leaders in the 21st century in that industry. I would like to ask a question about what you've been doing. You've been in power since 2015, and really, after COVID, which was very, very difficult, the planes weren't even flying, and so the industry really needs support. And right now, we're expecting an election in about, maximum a year, and that's democracy. People can vote for who they want. But why do we have this potential document of a strategy for the aerospace industry right at the end of a term after 9 years in power? Answer. Well, I think that I'm more hopeful than you are about the future. I am confident confident about what will happen in the future. And I've said very publicly, when we met with the people who represent the aerospace industry, that I focus on investment first, because it was important to really make sure that we got those investments that would benefit future generations. That's the long term, but we also had to act quickly. Short term, with Pratt & Whitney, we invested in new generation motors. And that's why we worked with Bell Helicopter to make Mirabel the capital, the world capital of civilian helicopters. As you know, that almost all of the Bell helicopters are made in Mirabel. And we got that investment. So you may want to criticize me, but I am a man of action. When I see an opportunity, I take it. Yes, we need a strategy to go along with it, but we can't miss opportunities. We wanted to have Bell and Mirabel. We wanted to have the new motors from Pratt & Whitney in Longueuil so that we have a strong ecosystem. And that's when we said, okay, now we want to have a strategy. But I was focused on investments first and then strategy. Because as you know, it does take many months to formulate a strategy. I was there and you were there with me, and you know that things are moving quickly, so you have to really seize opportunities that benefit future generations when they come up. Thank you. You now have the floor for 3 minutes.
Mr. Freeland, I have a question about the GST tax holiday. Now, we voted to support this short-term tax holiday because we wanted to give people a break, but we recognize that it comes with some very serious shortcomings. One of the groups that I've heard from are small businesses in the communities I represent who are struggling with the idea of having to change their prices twice in a matter of 2 months. What is your response to them? And how is your government going to ensure that small businesses aren't burdened by this extra administrative step at their busiest time of year when they make the most revenue and they're really depending on focusing their energies elsewhere in their business? They have to spend time changing their prices for only 2 months, only to change them back. What's your message for them?
Yeah, look, first of all, that's a really good and serious question. And I think that all of us here have been spending time with small businesses in our communities, hearing from them. My first message is that first and foremost, this is a measure about helping Canadians. I think we are all glad that inflation has now come down to the Bank of Canada's target range and that rates are following. But I think we all recognize things have been hard for Canadians. And this tax break is about giving Canadians a little bit of extra help, helping them to buy the things they need and save money for the things they want. For small businesses, I think it's important to recognize they work really, really hard. The small businesses that I've been speaking to, both the organizations that represent them, and I was in Toronto on Thursday at Treasure Island Toys, run by 2 women, 2 mothers. And they told me they were really looking forward to this. They were very hopeful it was going to bring more people into the store ahead of Christmas. And they also said something I've heard from a lot of people, which is that generally January is a quiet month. And so they're hopeful that the additional clientele that this brings in December will carry through to the usually quieter month of January. So I'm sympathetic to the challenges. I'm hopeful that this will help small businesses as well as the people who buy things there.
Okay, this is not what I'm hearing from the businesses I represent, so I'll take that message back to them and tell you what they say. The GST was never meant to be charged on essentials. It's why many essentials were exempted when it was first brought in the early 90s. What's the argument against making a tax cut on essentials permanent? This is what we've proposed. Take the tax off things that are clearly essential items, things like home heating, things like phone and internet bills, kids' clothing. Canadians, I think you'll agree, deserve much more than a 2-month holiday on the tax on those items. Why not make the GST cut permanent?
So look, I first would really like to thank you for support for this tax holiday. And I do want to be clear that this is a temporary measure. It's something that we have the capacity to put in place now to support Canadians when they need it. But this measure is time limited.
Yeah, no, I'm very much aware of that. I think that's the shortcoming, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. You're out of time, I'm afraid, but we'll get back to you shortly. Monsieur Généreux, la
You
parole
gave me
est à
my
vous.
29 seconds?
I did. A minute. I doubled it. Whew. Monsieur Généreux.
Okay, you.
The only kind of inflation we're okay with.
Went over the budget.
Look,
That's it.
lucky you. He's never generous like that to me.
Another Liberal that went over the budget.
Il me donne jamais plus de temps. Alors,
I never get more time. Thank you very much, ministers, for being here. Minister Freeland, do you think that the fact that our deficit, your deficit, is the lowest in the G7, do you think that that means that you can spend however you want? Absolutely not. But I think I know, in fact, that it is very important to Canadians and for international capital markets to know that Canada's public finances are sustainable, that our position is the best in the G7. It's important, and it's important to highlight that. Yes, thank you very much. You like the soft landing expression quite a bit. You've used it a number of times this morning. Is that why the officials leaked to the media that the deficit would be about $60 billion rather than $40 billion? Is that so that you could have a soft landing with Canadians, so that they would accept your $60 billion deficit? I am here to answer directly, and I will answer. I agree with you that a soft landing is very important for Canada, for Canadians. That is because COVID was a recession, a global recession, and then there was the interest rate. And now all those three things have now led to a soft landing, and I'm very happy about that. So I'm glad that you have highlighted the importance of a soft landing for Canadians. Question. So does that mean that Canadians, that by the end of March, after the end of the financial year, there will be a $60 billion deficit and not a $40 billion deficit? And those were the guardrails that you yourself established. It wasn't the opposition parties who decided what Canada's guardrails were going to be. It was you. So that would mean that you will not have respected your own guardrails. My question is, why is it that as you try to set these financial guardrails or fiscal guardrails, do you allow yourself to go beyond them? Because you can't say that Canada's economy is going full steam ahead right now, even though COVID is over. Well, thank you for your question, but I should highlight that your question is based on a number of hypotheticals. On Monday, I will be presenting the economic update with all of the figures. But today, what is important, and it's important for Canadians and also for international markets, what I want to confirm and reconfirm is that Canada's public finances are sustainable, that Canada is in the best financial position of the G7 when it comes to the debt to GDP ratio and the deficit to GDP. And that is very important in a world that is very uncertain. It's also incredibly important to prevent partisan squabbling from obscuring the fact that our financial position is sustainable, and international markets recognize that. Mrs. Freeland, you know that when it no longer is sustainable, because you say that the position is sustainable compared to other G7 countries, but when it is no longer sustainable, because among other things, the program that you have set up will cost billions and tens of billions of dollars that we don't have, do you think that our credit rating will suffer then? No, absolutely not. what guarantees and demonstrates the fact that our public finances are sustainable is the debt to GDP ratio. So I would really stress the fact that Canada's financial position is sustainable, and I'm not the only person saying so. The international markets are saying so. The international capital markets are saying so, and the PBO is saying that as well. This summer, the PBO confirmed that Canada's public finances are sustainable, which is a very good thing. The chair is not paying attention, so I'll take advantage of this to ask you a question. Minister Champagne, Northvolt, Leona Electric, Taiga Motors. We can see that the EV battery sector is having a hard time. So how do you see the future? I mean, really, are you going to be intervening if some of those companies get close to bankruptcy? I know that you are a man of vision. I know you, and I know that. So when technology changes after about 100 years, that's what we're seeing. We've been making vehicles the same way for 100 years, and now we're looking forward to the next 100 years. So when it comes to the short-time effects on a consumer's habits, on supply chains, and other things, well, it causes disruptions. Remember when the first Model T Ford was developed and launched, it wasn't an easy thing. There were a lot of disruptions then. So you like figures. So it took 17 years for the Model T Ford to become affordable and with subsidies from the U.S. government. So it takes time, and you know that. We position Quebec as a player, and when I go to Tokyo, when I go to Seoul, they talk about Quebec. So yes, there can be ups and downs in the short term, but what about GM POSCO? That's going well. There's EcoPro that's doing very well in Bécancour and in Granby as well. The company there is doing well. What about the $15 billion investment by Honda in Canada? So yes, some players in the ecosystem are slowing down, but there's a lot of progress being made at the same time. And that is because we were able to seize the generational opportunities. And in the case of Northvolt, I'll repeat it, I've said it often, we did not pay federal funds into that project. So you should be proud of having a government that is there to protect Quebec's interest and while ensuring that Quebec is part of the ecosystem. Yes, we are proud. Thank you very much, Mr. Généreux. And please do not hesitate to show how proud you are of the government. I did give you a little bit more time because it was such a nice conversation to hear. Mr. Badaway, you have the floor.
Ministers, thank you for being here today. You're probably anticipating what I'm going to be speaking about, supply chains, and of course the importance of supply chains being the backbone of our economy. They do connect our industries, they connect our communities, they connect countries. And I want to speak a lot about the fact that supply chains you can't manipulate supply chains. They are what they are. You know, their production and sales happen in certain parts of here in Canada, but also they cross borders. And with that, the need for them to be very seamless, to flow with fluidity, and therefore, as Minister Freeland mentioned earlier, the need for capacity building within those supply chains. We've seen in recent years global challenges, COVID-19, the pandemic, geopolitical tensions, and climate change that have exposed vulnerabilities within our supply chains. Question one is with respect to the importance and what you see or how you see us moving forward with creating more supply chain resiliency, efficiency, as well as sustainability to create the economic growth, the community impact, and the global challenges. And the second question is, and very relevant to supply chains as well, is the importance of our bilateral relationships, especially with the U.S. And with that, the mechanisms that you see moving forward that we can look at, one, integrating our economies, sharing the capacity building, infrastructure investments, capital investments, are together creating more global competitiveness versus apart. Resiliency to disruptions, as I mentioned earlier, such as the pandemic, et cetera. And lastly, affordability. Affordability is very important to us, and in the States, it's important to them as well. Are there, for example, not only in terms of opportunities to add capacity, invest, but utilizing other strategies with other countries, such as the EU, with, for example, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. What do you see, and how do you see us moving forward with all that said? I'll start off with you, Minister Champagne.
Well, I'll take the first part of your question, and you're spot on, Mr. Badaway, as always. Obviously, you represent a region, Niagara, which is very intertwined in terms of supply chain. I would say you're spot on because after COVID, what we've seen is that global supply chain have become more regional. And there's more emphasis on resiliency than pure efficiency. You know, the world has been transformed. Minister Fiona was saying that, and we both were witnessing that over a period of a decade. We've seen really the supply chain and the global trading order really shifting in a way, particularly, obviously, not only with conflicts and tension you see in many parts of the world, but certainly in terms of the resiliency that people want to see. And I'll tell you that in my role as co-chair of the Canada-U.S. engagement, when we started engaging with our U.S. colleague, to tell you how significant everything you just said, the first thing we always worked or talked with our American friends was security. Security of the borders, security of the Arctic, security of the North. The second thing was supply chain resiliency, because that is everything today. I remember a CEO telling me, he said, Minister Champagne, you know what I like about Canada? If things go bad, I'll truck the stuff across the border. If it goes really bad, I'll go pick it up with my pickup truck. And I'll go myself to pick it up, because the proximity is what makes a huge difference in that. And the third aspect we were talking with our U.S. friend is a growth agenda. And I'll give you 3 examples, then I'll turn over to Minister Freeland. But for folks who are watching at home, just to tell you about the integrated nature of our supply chain with the Americans, probably your colleagues have not realized, but 80% of all the semiconductors which are manufactured, are packaged in the United States, are packaged and tested in Bromont in Quebec. That is the Albany-Bromont corridor we talked about. This is so significant. You don't need to take it from me, although I know you're a friend, you would take it from me. But it's even better when you had the President of the United States, when he came to speak to the House of Commons, made the point that the United States, I don't remember the word verbatim, but the concept was that the United States and Canada need to work together for the United States and North America to be resilient in semiconductor. I'll give you another example where we invested with Rio Tinto on titanium. The titanium that is produced now in Sorel, Quebec, we're going to be doing titanium powder. With titanium powder, you do 3D printing. With 3D printing of titanium powder, you replace parts of jets on aircraft carriers. That is so significant for the economic security and national security of North America that I would tell you that our American friends have noticed that. And it's the same thing if I was to go in key critical minerals as well. We are, as you know, there's only one refinery of cobalt that is serving both markets in Canada and the United States. So my point is to say your focus and your role and everything you've been doing, I want everyone at home to know the work you've been doing to make sure that we improve the connectivity between our 2 countries with the United States. And when it comes to critical minerals, I will tell you when I talk to CEOs, it's proximity to resources, market, and assembly line. There are critical minerals elsewhere in the world, but I can tell you that global companies, they want to sell in the United States and Canada. They want to have that proximity. So the work you've been doing in the Great Lakes and championing that as the chair of that committee, which is both with the United States and Canada, is making a huge difference. You've been a great asset for us in strengthening that relationship with the United States. Madam Freeland?
Look, I am in very strong agreement with your question, Mr. Badaway, and with Francois Philippe's response. And I really do want to thank you for being quite prescient. You have been working on and talking about supply chains, and you have been building as one MP with elected representatives on the other side of the border, those human relationships for a long time. And I do want to say, and I hope your constituents are listening, I'm very grateful to you for that work. I think those relationships, those explanations, those conversations you have been having will serve us very well now. And I do think your point about how we need supply chains which are resilient is more important today than ever, and that is a huge competitive advantage for Canada right now.
Way. So this is a very timely question you're asking the chair while he's distracted, so thank you. MP Patzer, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ministers, for being here today. Minister Freeland, just really quickly, can you tell me what the national debt is? Just quickly, please.
I feel that the MPs at this committee have a lost vocation as members of the Finance Committee. But let me just say to you and to all of your colleagues that notwithstanding the Conservative filibuster, I'm very glad that we'll have a chance to present the fall economic statement on Monday, and we will fully disclose all of the relevant figures. And I do want to emphasize, because people have been calling it into question, that Canada's public finances remain sustainable and remain the best in the G7.
Okay, so you are, you said that your fiscal guardrail was a $40 billion deficit. Your department's leaked out $60 billion. Now, it'd be quite convenient if you're leaked out $60 billion and you slide in at somewhere in between at about $50 billion to see, they were wrong. But that still is blowing past your guardrail that you said was in place. So I don't know why you can't just simply say no to the deficit potentially being $60 billion for this particular fiscal year. Why is that?
I am not going to comment on hypotheticals, and I am not going to comment on leaks. What I can say very clearly is that Canada's public finances are sustainable. As the Parliamentary Budget Officer reported in the summer, Canada's debt to GDP ratio, which is the crucial metric, is the lowest in the G7, and our debt to GDP ratio is on a declining track. That is the key measure of sustainable public finances. It is a great strength of Canada, and it's really important for us all to be clear about that.
Okay, so earlier in your remarks, I think it was in response to another question that you had, you said that we had a 1.5% GDP swing that could be allowed when it came to a hit to our economy. Are you aware that your government has just implemented a policy that will directly blow a 1% GDP reduction into the economy?
I'd like to be clear, Mr. Patzer. I was quoting the Parliamentary Budget Officer, who concluded in his independent study of the public finances that not only, but that's important. It wasn't. I just, for the record, want to be very clear.
So you don't agree with the Parliamentary Budget Officer?
No, but I want to be clear that I was quoting his analysis, and it is important, given some of the partisan assertions being made, to bring that objective analysis to bear, to really make clear to Canadians and to international capital markets that our public finances are clearly sustainable. That's why I quoted that analysis of his.
Okay, so you're comfortable with a 1.3% loss in government revenue then?
Again, that is exactly the partisan twisting and falsehood that I'm being very clear to counter.
Okay, so that was Conference Board of Canada that said that. It was Deloitte that said that, not me.
No, this was an analysis of the Parliamentary Budget Officer. And again, given the hypotheticals, the assertions being made, it's important to be clear to Canadians and to capital markets that our public finances are sustainable. That's what I'm insisting on right now.
Okay. Despite all of that, the emissions cap is going to blow a 1% hole in the Canadian economy, and it's going to cost government coffers a 1.3% drop in revenue. Ms. Freeland, the carbon tax is causing a huge pain for consumers. The cost of everything is going up. Groceries are going to go up $800 next year for average people, and you are going to increase the carbon tax. Are you comfortable in continuing to increase the carbon tax on Canadians when they continue to go through a cost of living crisis, and it continues to go on day after day? You're comfortable with that?
The fact is that 8 out of 10 Canadians get more back through the Canada Carbon Rebate. And there is some really good news right now, which is Canadian businesses are getting back $2.5 billion through the small business carbon rebate. That is money directly to Canadian businesses and will help them at an important time.
Okay, so when this meeting started, the Canadian national debt was $1.24 trillion. And by the time this meeting is over, just the time of this meeting alone, an additional $10 million is going to be added onto that alone. Just today, an additional $110 million will be added onto the deficit. And that's without you spending any money, Minister. But it's a byproduct of the reckless spending of your government. Are you comfortable with that much extra debt being added onto the national debt for my kids, for my grandkids, for the next generations to be saddled with before they even hit the economy? You're comfortable with that?
What I am not comfortable with is misleading statements about the true state of Canada's public finances. The reality is our public finances are sustainable. That is the judgment of the markets. That is the judgment of the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Our debt to GDP ratio is on a downward path. That is the crucial measure. And I want to be very clear that if the Conservatives are proposing cuts and austerity, cuts to health care, cuts to dental care, cuts to early learning and child care, that is a recipe for failure and austerity for Canada and Canadians. That is a recipe for hurting people and for hurting our economy.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Monsieur Patzer.
Thank you, Minister.
Great. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, obviously, to the ministers for appearing. I apologize. I'm not there in person. My flight got canceled today. My questions are for Minister Champagne. Minister, we know that the work of Parliament has been long delayed because of the Conservative filibuster, and now with supplementary estimates on the table, we're having to face very difficult truths about what's at stake if we don't pass these in time. I've had conversations, and I appreciate the conversations that I've had with students from my riding, and I suppose they're on my mind when considering that your department directly awards funding and research awards to graduate and postdoctoral students. My question is, will the students be affected by delays in passing the supplementary estimates, and how so?
I want to say thank you for a very, very significant question. And for Canadians who are watching at home, that is one of the most crucial questions, because the filibuster we've seen by the Conservatives, and you have to call it for what it is. It's really, filibustering your own motion. I think in history, people will remember that time where you're filibustering for 2 months your own motion after the government has tendered more than 20,000 pages. That's a lot of reading for Christmas that I see the Conservative member that are going to look. But you're right that, what is doing is really but honestly, Mr. Perkins, look at the young people when you walk in the street. Those graduate students, those researchers, these postdoc students, they're expecting what Minister Freeland and I have been working on, which was we had heard, and you have heard, Mr. Perkins, I know you're a man of you have a good heart. You've heard these students coming here and say, we need to really adjust the grants that we're receiving because, the research of today is the economy of tomorrow. This is our future. This is our kids, our researchers, our students. And they said, give us a hand. And we said, we hear you. We're going to do that. But now, obviously, Mr. Chair, you would know that. We need to pass the estimates because, obviously, they're expecting that. I'll give you another example that even every Canadian should be worried about. The Canadarm3. Canada is known around the world in space. The Canadarm is the flagship of our country. Everyone in the world knows what we've been, our engineers, our scientists have been able to inspire the world. This is depending on the supplementary estimates. Those are real things that affect people in their lives. And I would say, I could go on and on. Imagine the new rover. Mr. Perkins, I look at you. Imagine the new rover on the moon. NASA depends on us for their lunar mission. And obviously, the supplemental estimates is a key enabler of that. And we need to make sure that we're going to be answering that. Let me give one final example, because you're going to love this one in particular. The Canada AI Safety Institute. We were just in San Francisco with the world, saying with our American friends, you care a lot about the U.S. relationship. I know that. Think about that. We were just with them on the podium saying Canada and the United States are going to have the Canada AI Safety Institute. We're going to work together. And now we're going to say, well, it depends on the supplementary estimates. Ask the Conservatives, are they going to allow Parliament to function? Those are real things that have real impact in the real world. So I think this is one of the most important questions we had tonight. We do need to get back to business. Canadians, when they're working up in the morning, they go to work. They expect the same thing from everyone in this building. We do our part, but I think, Mr. Perkins, I look at you. You and your colleagues, I know you have a good heart. You need to do your part to make sure that Canadians who depend on these funding will get in on time for Christmas.
Great. Thank you, Minister. With the time that I have remaining, I wanted to ask, what's at stake for our colleges and universities if they lose trust in our ability to get them funding when they need it reliably and promptly?
Here, you're spot on as always. There's 5 things that have been attracting Canada or investment in Canada. The first one is talent. And I think we should be proud as Canadians that Canada is a magnet for talent. And I would say, if you go at G7 meetings, you'd say that immigration is one of the things that is seen positively still in Canada. This is a golden opportunity for us to attract talent. The second thing is the strength of our ecosystem that we have in the country. We have the critical minerals to make sure that we lead the economy of the 21st century. We have renewable energy. We're the only G7 country with a free trade agreement with all the other G7 nations. So to your point, obviously, people can walk where their feet. So these students who are looking, they say, am I going to come in Canada? Is it, as promised? And we'd like to answer yes, but I think we'll need our conservative friends because we know that they care as well about the future. They care about Canada leading in the 21st century. They know that science is going to lead to innovation. They know that science of today is the economy of tomorrow. So for all of those Canadians who are watching, I hope they can impress on their MPs on the Conservative bench to say, do the right thing for Canada, do the right thing for my kids, do the right thing for Canada to continue to lead in the 21st century.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you.
Monsieur Savard-Tremblay, la parole est à
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Savard-Tremblay, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. So, Minister, let's come back to the question that yes, the question of tariffs. We've been hearing about them. So there are some tariffs in place. That's not theoretical. That's not when the new president is inaugurated in January. You said that you would be cooperating with businesses to ensure that there would be innovation that would get us out of the crisis. So does that mean that the industry will have to innovate within the industry, or whether there needs to be innovative solutions to problems affecting the industry? So I will once again be asking about deadlines. So when will there be support for the forestry industry in Quebec? Answer. Thank you for your question. As you know, that the forestry industry is an essential industry for jobs and economic development. And what I said when I appeared before the committee last time is that I would like there to be innovation in Canada in that industry. We've seen practices in Finland, for example. There, we've tried to see how to use wood fiber because, as you know, that once upon a time we'd cut the trees down and send it down the river, the Saint-Maurice River in Quebec, and then it was transformed in paper mills. But I think now, when I was with Kruger earlier and recently, and so it would be possible to replace synthetic fiber with wood-based fiber. So I'm really focused on projects that are being proposed. There's Rimabec, for example. They're for biofuels. They had an interesting project there. And what I'd like to see is forestry in Quebec, but throughout the country, where new ways of using the forest are being explored, because it's a resource that we have, and the proper management of forest resources is essential. So we are working with parties, and there are projects underway and being developed. I'm a man of action like you, and I want to work with the industry closely. Question. Yeah, so what does that mean? Does that mean investing in processing, using wood more in construction, on the domestic market? What are the potential solutions, and what should we expect? And because, they would like to see what is going to happen, because there's money attached to that. Answer. So, for example, why not use more wood in construction in the country? Yes, we are rebuilding the real estate assets in the country. I saw a 6-story building where wood was used, and also residences for students on campuses as well. So yes, as always, your analysis is solid, but when it comes to new solutions, yes, using more wood is one. What about biofuels? I heard a proposal of where a chemical fiber, and I can't go into the details publicly today, but that would open up a multi-billion-dollar market. So when you open up new markets with new products, well, that creates jobs. And when that happens, well, then we're ready to invest. Well, we heard my colleague, Minister Freeland, who is answering the Conservatives, is that what we are doing is we are making investments for which there will be a return on investment. We have invested a great deal, and we have changed the industrial face of the country. I understand how powerful an industrial policy that ushers in change can be. So what we've done in the automobile industry, in biomanufacturing, in critical minerals as well, I would like to do that for forestry. And we will be relying on solutions that will bring in prosperity in the 21st century. I think that we're in a crisis because in a competitive context, yes, we might say, it's important to have, modernization. But now we're really on the edge because it's been 40 years. There have been countervailing duties. There have been punitive tariffs as well. And so now it's sort of like a white noise in the media. We know that what the U.S.'s position is with regard to our forestry industry. We need an urgent solution. Yes, you've talked about some nice projects, but we need investment. I wanted strategy before, and you talked about investment. Now you're talking about strategy. I want investment. Answer rather. So yes, investment is taking place, but there's a strategy behind it. We've always had the forestry industry's back. Minister Freeland has also always understood how important the industry is because really it has to do with occupying the space. Because when it comes to processing, we're talking about rural regions and we want our regions to be strong. So yes, investment is underway and being developed. But I would also say that we've always had workers back. The workers in the forestry industry have been supported by us. And what I do like about your analysis is that you are always looking further down the road, and that's very good. I was discussing the issue with a former prime minister who was saying that there are problems that have been around for decades, but now what has to happen is that markets have to be developed and products do too, so we can support workers in the industry. Thank you very much, Minister. Mr. Bachrach, you have 5 minutes.
Mr. Morris has been watching and listening intently, and I think it would only be fair to give him a couple of minutes to ask a question. Mr. Morris, I'll give you 2 minutes, and then if you could pass it back to me, it'd be appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. Shared, let it be known. This is an MP who's not only effective but kind, too. Thank you. I have 2 priorities I'd like to raise with Minister Freeland. First is with respect and on behalf of folks with disabilities who, as you know, are disproportionately living in poverty across the country. Your government announced $6.3 billion worth of investments recently, the majority of which actually excludes them directly. This is when we know that with slightly more, we could actually lift about 278 folks with disabilities out of poverty. It comes on the heels of a Canada Disability benefit that was not what was promised. So there's a lot of folks who are livid in my community who've spoken with me. What would you say, Minister Freeland, to folks with disabilities who are so deeply disappointed?
Well, look, I would first say thank you to you for speaking to the most vulnerable in your own community. I think that is part of the job that we all need to do. Second, I will say the Canada Disability Benefit is an important step. And that is a step that only our federal government has taken. I hope that all of us around this table will be glad to be MPs at a time when the government, the country, is taking this important step. And I will say to everyone who voted against our budget that you were voting against this important step forward for the most vulnerable among us.
Thank you, Minister Freeland. I think the reality is, though, when the folks you're trying to help are telling your government that they're so disappointed, it might not be exactly as advertised. But I respect you might have a difference of opinions there. I want to turn to something that I think we might agree on. Chair, if you could interrupt me when there's 2.5 or so minutes left to turn back to Mr. Bachrach. This was with respect to the housing crisis. And as you know, I've been advocating with respect to Habitat for Humanity. They were left out of the HST exemption that was provided for for-profit developers of rental housing around this time last year. It's a significant issue for them. With this, they could build additional affordable homes. We could fund it by getting rid of the tax exemption for real estate investment trusts that are actually profiteering off of the housing crisis. I sent you a letter about it on October 25th. I raised it in question period. I got a response back from Minister Fraser. He said to speak with you. And so I'd like to understand more whether you are considering this. I know you won't reveal what's in the fall economic statement, but I would like to hear more with respect to this tax exemption for Habitat to build more affordable homes.
And a brief answer, please.
Just to say thank you for your work on it. I'm aware of your advocacy. I'm aware of the issue. And as you correctly foresaw, I have nothing to announce on that today.
And Mr. Bachrach, you have about 2 minutes left.
Picking up on folks who are vulnerable in our communities, I want to talk about low-income seniors, seniors that rely on old age security and the guaranteed income supplement, which across Canada is hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of seniors, including my father. And I recently, in talking to our seniors critic, learned that while your government increased very modestly the old age security payments, that increase resulted in people's guaranteed income supplement being clawed back. Is that true? And if so, how is that possible?
So let me just say about our seniors. One of the things that was a priority for our government from when we first formed government was to support our seniors, to roll back Stephen Harper's decision to push retirement to 67 from 65, and to increase the support we offer our seniors, especially the most vulnerable. And that has had an impact. We have had significant measurable reductions of Canadian seniors living in poverty.
One more question,
and today,
Minister,
okay,
so
I'm just good. I want to put one other point on the record, which is this year, the Government of Canada, which means the people of Canada, will be spending $80 billion to support our seniors. And I think that is a considerable sum that we should all be glad we are able to provide to seniors across the country, and has significantly been focused on our most vulnerable.
It's really frustrating, Minister, that you didn't answer the question about the GIS being clawed back. And you spoke of the Harper record. One of the things the Harper government did was bring in income splitting for senior couples, and this has put single seniors at a serious tax disadvantage. And I wonder how your government can justify not adjusting the tax regime so that single seniors aren't paying $5,000 more tax for the same combined income as a senior couple. Is this something you're aware of, and is it something that you plan to address?
Mr. Bachrach, I share your central concern that you've been expressing in these questions, that we need to do more to support all our seniors, especially the most vulnerable. I completely agree with you. We are spending $80 billion this year to support our seniors, and our support has significantly measurably reduced the number of seniors living in poverty. Of course, better is always possible, and within the constraints of a fiscally responsible plan that we've been discussing at some length, I think all of us would agree that we would like to continue supporting our seniors.
Thank you very much, Minister. Mr. Perkins, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question to Minister Champagne, to follow up on your last statement. Since we are dealing with supplementary estimates here, in other words, additional spending for your department, Can you tell me how much is in these supplementary estimates for toner cartridge that was used to blank out 30,000 pages on the Green Slush Fund?
Mr. Perkins, I'm always happy to come at the committee when you're there. I must say this is the best gift I have before Christmas. You know, I know you're a man of good heart. You know that what we did was to comply with the requests of this committee to produce 29,000 pages. I know it's a lot of reading for Christmas, but I don't expect a Christmas card from you this year on this one.
It's all blanked out. You're, of course, getting a Christmas card from me, but it was all blanked out. Minister Freeland, I would like to ask you, you know, I have some sympathy for you because every budget that you've presented, you've said this is the guardrail, this is the deficit, we're not going beyond it, and in every one you've missed it. So can you tell me who is telling you that you have to go through in the year after your deficit? Is it Mr. Carney or is it the Prime Minister?
I share my colleague, the industry minister's view that you have a good heart, Mr. Perkins. Unfortunately, I have to correct and strongly disagree with your core assertion. The fact is, notwithstanding Conservative repeated attempts to muddy the waters, Canada has had the fastest fiscal consolidation in the G7 since the COVID recession. We have the lowest debt to GDP ratio. We have the lowest deficit. Markets are rewarding us for that with cheaper debt than the UK and the US. This is what a fiscally responsible plan is. And I would like to point out that we are on track to achieve a soft landing from the COVID recession more successfully than experts predicted at the peak of that recession, which is deeper than the Great Depression, and a much quicker recovery than Stephen Harper was able to deliver.
Because you never meet it. So if I could go on to my next question. On the oil and gas cap, did Finance do an economic analysis, your department, on what the impact of that cap would be on reducing the production in the oil and gas industry and thus on our economy?
I'm very glad to have a question about the oil and gas industry because one of the important infrastructure investments by our government is to complete the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which is in service today, and that is estimated to be adding by the Bank of Canada 0.25% to Canada's GDP. That was the result of an activist government that stepped in when the private sector could not get the job done.
Fair enough, Minister,
and is
but
adding
I
to
noticed
Canada's
that you
economy.
didn't answer the question of whether or not the department, yes or no, did an economic analysis to impact that cap. If you could quickly, because I have another question I need to ask you.
No, let me be very clear. If the Conservatives are sincere in believing that the oil and gas industry contributes to the Canadian economy and to our national security, as do I would like to hear the Conservatives talking about the value that the Trans Mountain Pipeline brings to our economy. And I have not heard that a single time.
I take it that's
and
a no since you're refusing
that shows
to answer
extreme
the question.
hypocrisy.
So former Bank of Canada Governor Stephen Poloz says we're in a recession. You say we're in a vibe session. Can you tell me what people are experiencing in a vibe session that's different than a recession?
What I can say, Mr. Perkins, is that after a very challenging time with high inflation and high interest rates, Canada now has had inflation within the Bank of Canada's target range for 10 months, and I am glad to be able to quote the governor of the Bank of Canada, who said, speaking to the Senate Banking Committee, we are no longer trying to get inflation down. Government spending is not pushing against us getting inflation down. We have brought it down. Again, that is not a liberal or a conservative. That is the independent governor of our central bank, and that is something we should all celebrate.
Are the 2 million people experiencing food banks, a record number under your government, are they experiencing the recession versus the vibe session differently, or are they in a recession when they cannot pay or get food?
It is the height of hypocrisy for Conservatives to claim to care about the most vulnerable. Conservatives are the party that voted against a national school food program. Conservatives are the party that is voting against dental care. Conservatives will have a chance tomorrow to vote on whether seniors should be able to get dental care.
That's enough. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's enough. MP Badaway, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
That was entertaining. I have to emphasize this point. The United States, 345 million people. Canada, close to 40 million people. Canada, because of our ratified trade agreements, today, over 1.3 billion is their economic population. 1.3 billion is their economic population because of those trade agreements. With that said, and moving forward, as I was saying earlier about supply chains, infrastructure modernization, managing our assets, technological innovation, sustainability, regulatory harmonization, workforce development, capacity building, and most importantly, not only binational, but international collaboration. Can you speak about how we're moving forward, once again, touching all those points with respect to supply chain resiliency, but also, as I said earlier, taking full advantage of Canada's economic population, which is over 1.3 billion people.
By the way, I can only say you're spot on again. And I think, Canadians watching, I hope, should realize Canada, and I'll repeat myself because I know every time I say that, Canadians are saying, wow, Canada is the only G7 country which has a free trade agreement with all other G7 countries. And think about that. This is an accomplishment that will go down in history. Now, we are linked with the European Union, having access to this wonderful market, hundreds of millions. Some would say the largest consumer market in the world. And what is amazing is that Canada is almost considered like a European country when it comes, for example, to opportunities if you want to bid for public work in the European Union. That has expanded vastly the opportunities of small and medium-sized businesses. Then you look at what we've done with the CPTPP, because I would say demography is destiny. Canada had the foresight at a time to say we should join one of the largest growing trade bloc in the world. And imagine when we start that, imagine, Mr. Badaway, Canada was the second largest economy in that grouping of country. Because when the United States decided to leave, you had Japan and then you had Canada. Now you have the United Kingdom, which is part of it. But think about that. If you're on the West Coast and you want to sell in Japan, you want to sell in Singapore, you believe in the growth of the market in Vietnam, you have this unique opportunity to be able to sell to some of the fastest growing economy in Asia. And then you have obviously what Minister Freeland, and I think we should all, as Canadians, recognize the work that she's been doing on USMCA to make sure that Canada would be part of the greatest economic zone in the world with the United States and Mexico. But if you look at opportunities and possibilities, that's why every time I hear conservatives talking down Canada, it hurts me. And I'm sure it hurts Canadians because if you look at the fundamentals today, what do you need? You need talent. You need large ecosystem like we have in steel, aluminum, in auto manufacturing and energy. You need critical minerals. I put it to you that critical minerals are going to be as important as oil was in the 20th century because you need critical minerals to not only do battery, but semiconductors. And if you agree with me that semiconductors is the DNA of progress, the nations which are going to have the critical minerals are going to be winner in the economy of the 21st century. We have abundant renewable energy. More than 80% of our grid is renewable energy. Think about that. And Canada now, through the investment of Brookfield in Westinghouse with Cameco, we indirectly have access to 50% of all the nuclear civilian installed base in the world. Think about the opportunity. Canada and the United States can lead the world. Some have said we're going to become like the superpower of renewable energy. Think about that for the future generation. And what we have accomplished, like you said, Mr. Badaway, is that now if you're a small and medium-sized business in Canada, you can sell to the United States, our closest partner. But you also can think about selling in Germany. You can sell in Italy. You can then move on and say, I'm going to be in Vietnam. This is, Canada is uniquely placed. We've been blessed by geography. We've been blessed by natural resources. We've been blessed by people. that have come on our shore. And if you look at the fundamental of the 21st century, we have everything to win. That's why I want an ambitious Canada. Canada that looks at possibilities, opportunities, strong, proud, ambitious. That's what we need to be. And that's why I think every member of this House and this committee, especially at the Industry Committee, should celebrate. We should do a roadshow together, talk about what we have as Canada, go around the world and sell the country. That's why, sometimes we should all be bragging about Canadian and Kenyan workers because we have the best.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister. And now for the final round, I have 5 minutes for Mr. Chambers, 5 minutes for Mr. Turnbull. Mr. Chambers, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ministers, it's nice to have you here. I just wanted to follow up on my colleague, Mr. Perkins' questions about the emissions cap. I'm just curious, can you confirm, did the Department of Finance do an economic analysis of the impacts to GDP of the emissions cap?
Mr. Chambers, I just very quickly want to say I appreciated what I saw was your chuckle when I mentioned Trans Mountain Pipeline. And I do want to say, in the spirit of what the industry minister has said about let's celebrate the great things we can do together, he's been talking about some great trade deals. And I do want to take one bipartisan moment to recognize the work that Ed Fast did in putting some of those deals in motion. And I was glad to congratulate him on the floor of the House of Commons, and I'm glad to say that today.
Thank you. I will pass that along to Ed.
Please do.
But my question, did the Department of Finance, did they complete an economic impact analysis of the impacts to GDP of the emissions cap?
I will just say that I believe, as I think we all ought to, I recognize the importance of the oil and gas sector to the Canadian economy.
If it's a no, that's fine.
That's why we built a pipeline. And we are very thoughtful about ensuring that that sector can continue to contribute.
I find it hard
and that's
to
why we
believe-
built a pipeline, which your government failed to do.
I find it hard to believe that the Department of Finance would not have completed an economic impact analysis of a policy measure that great. So is your testimony that there is no economic analysis, or yes, and you don't really want to talk about it?
My point, Mr. Chambers, is that to have the Conservatives talk about the importance of the oil and gas sector when they didn't build a pipeline,
So will
and
there
when
be
they
a
did
loss?
everything they could to stop us from building a pipeline that has closed the differential that Canada was paying to the U.S., that has diversified
Fair
our
enough. I'm going to
trade
jump in because
opportunities
it's
at
clear
a
that you don't want to
critical
answer
moment.
the question.
That is the
So
height of
I'll
hypocrisy.
ask one on Trans Mountain. Will you guarantee that there won't be a loss to the government when it disposes of Trans Mountain? Yes or no?
I am confident that Trans Mountain is to the very clear and strong benefit to the people of Canada. This was a great investment. It is already making our country more prosperous and giving us
Thank you very
stronger
much.
national security.
Thank you very much. In the 2019 election, the Liberal Party platform said that increasing amortizations to 30 years would push up house prices and push people further into debt. Yet, just a couple months ago, your government increased amortizations to 30 years. Do you reverse that position? Do you believe that it's going to increase house prices?
As I hope you are aware, the 30-year amortization is focused. It is focused on new builds, and it is focused on first-time home buyers. This is a really important step to help young Canadians have an advantage in the market, get their first home. And it's an important step to create more demand for new builds, which I hope we all agree are absolutely essential. And Mr. Chambers, if the Conservative Party is opposed to 30-year amortizations, then I think
do an
the
analysis of
Conservative
whether it would
Party should
impact
be
house
very
prices
clear
along with the insured
with
mortgage
those
rules?
first-time home buyers who are going to be able to get that first home in December.
Okay. Minister, I think you're in the toughest position, probably next to the Bank of Canada governor, okay? You've made three very big promises with respect to spending. First was when there's no need for stimulus, we'd take it away. That didn't happen. Then it was debt to GDP will keep going down. That only lasted a year. And now you made a promise that the deficit would not be greater than $40 billion. Like, you're in a very difficult position in making these promises. I'm having a hard time understanding why you would make the promises and then have to break them. Like, is there some tension within, like, the Prime Minister's office and your office, or are you fully standing behind the deficit number when it's finally released? By the way, we have to vote on supplementary estimates before we get the public accounts from last year. I'm not really sure there's a lot of precedent for that.
Okay, so many incorrect statements embedded in there. But let me just start with two. First of all, and this is crucial, the declining debt to GDP ratio is the critical thing that underpins the stability and the sustainability of Canada's public finances. That is a significant accomplishment following the COVID recession, and it is significant to be able to do that while achieving a soft landing from the COVID recession. That is something all Canadians should celebrate. When it comes to the work of Parliament, it is a bit rich for Conservatives who have been blocking the constructive work of our Parliament for more than 2 months to criticize that. This is
you can introduce them anytime. The Speaker said you can introduce the public accounts anytime.
This is like an arsonist saying, wow, I don't like the heat and the smoke.
Minister,
That's
we're well over
exactly
time.
what we're
We'd
experiencing.
like to wish you both a very Merry Christmas. Thank you for showing up to committee
Yeah,
today.
and let me also wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Mr. Turnbull, floor is yours.
I like that last analogy, like an arsonist complaining about the heat and smoke. It's so true. Minister Freeland, I want to ask you a question just to clarify the record here, because the Conservatives have kept saying the oil and gas cap regulates production, but it actually doesn't. It regulates only the emissions. Can you just verify that for the record?
Yes, that's a very good point.
Thank you. And my understanding is that there's significant amounts of emissions reductions that can be achieved within the production process itself, of which our government has done two critical things. One is introduce an investment tax credit for carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And also, we've set up the Canada Growth Fund, which has already made some significant investments in some sizable projects. In fact, we heard about them at the Sustainable Finance Forum this year, which was great to hear. Could you just speak to how critically important it is to drive innovation in that industry and reduce the emissions within the production process?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Turnbull. Thank you for your hard work. I'm especially glad to have a chance to talk about the CCUS tax credits. I think these are really important for Canada. I am very glad that we have them in place now, and I do want to take this opportunity to say, let's start getting the Pathways project built. This is an investment in Canada's future. The federal government has done its part. The CCUS tax credits are in place. The Canada Growth Fund is working hard on this, and I would really call on everyone to get this across the finish line. This could really be great for jobs and growth. And I do also want to highlight, I know that you've been working with and talking about the Canada Growth Fund. I do want to highlight the very important Strathcona CCUS project, which the Canada Growth Fund is contributing to. This is a milestone, and I really hope and believe it is the beginning of some important projects in that space.
Thank you very much. I also want to pose a question to Minister Champagne about the importance of AI. I remember I got the chance to meet Yoshua Bengio, and we're very proud of Jeffrey Hinton. We're also very proud of Yoshua Bengio. Both of them played such an critical role in terms of the thought leadership that Canada has provided to the world. But he had said that it was like an Oppenheimer moment for him, where he was saying he's created something and he's now worried about the incredible risks that AI can pose. Not to say that there isn't considerable benefits for productivity, which there are, and we heard about that from my colleague, Mr. Van Bynen, but I'm also concerned about protecting Canadians and ensuring that we can take advantage of the innovation and productivity gains that AI can provide to our whole economy, small businesses, et cetera, as you've already highlighted. But I also want to give you an opportunity to talk about, on the risk risk side of things, ensuring that we have ethical use of AI, and we have critical legislation, C27. Do you want to speak to this at all?
For sure, and I want to say thank you to you, Mr. Turnbull, particularly on the Sustainable Finance Forum. Really, you have gathered some of the best minds in the country. We should all be proud of what you're doing. Not only you're an outstanding member of Parliament, but also as Parliamentary Secretary, you've been able to really guide us into this process. Listen, it's very simple. For folks who are watching at home, if we want to move from fear to opportunity, we need to build trust. And trust is fundamental. And how do you build trust? You have a framework. That's why C27 is so important, because only when you have trust can you have adoption. And with adoption, you'll have innovation. That is the decision tree we're facing. And that's why I want to say thank you also, Mr. Chair, for all the work you've been doing, Mr. Lightbond, to try to bring us there. Because I think, we said this is the holy grail of productivity, but we need to build trust. And that's why C27 and the work of this committee is so important. So I know we're getting around Christmas. I know people have a lot on their mind, but if there was a gift that the Conservatives would want to give to Canadians is really allow them to have a framework so that Canada can continue to lead on AI. And I know it's possible because when we want in this place, Mr. Chair, you have been a witness. When the House wants, we can do big things fast. We've done it before. If the member of the committee would put their good heart forward before Christmas, they'd say to Canadians, let's give them a gift. Let's give them a gift that will protect them, that will allow innovation and adoption of AI so that Canada will be this nation who can lead in the 21st century. So let's hope that they all have listened to me today. Mr. Chair, you've done a great job. Thank you for having me and Minister Freeland. I know it's going close to Christmas, and I see your smile, so it's about time for us to end. So thank you very much for having
Thank you, Minister.
us.
And after 3 years chairing this committee, I think Santa Claus will have to work overtime to deliver what you've asked, which is C27 adopted by this committee. But I'm optimistic. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Minister Champagne, Minister Freeland, for joining us for the full 2 hours. It's not often we have ministers for 2 hours like this, so I appreciate you participating in this. And colleagues, we will suspend for about 10 minutes and resume this meeting with Interac. So thanks. Meeting suspended. retard et
So we are a little bit late, and so as you know, the second part of this meeting is one where there's Mr. Jeremy Wilmot, the CEO of Interac.
and apologies for the delays in starting this committee meeting, but without further ado, we'll get it started. And as you know, you have a couple of minutes for your opening remarks. I know you've asked for 10. If you can, and considering you're the only witness, I'm okay, but if you can go around 7 or 8, that would be ideal. Mr. Wilmot, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So good afternoon or good evening, everybody. Every second, Canadians rely on Interac, whether they're tapping their debit cards to pay for everyday purchases, sending money to loved ones, or accessing critical services. For 40 years, we've been more than a payments company. We've been a trusted partner in building Canada's digital and economic resilience. Interac is proud to be Canada's most trusted financial services brand. Our products serve as a cornerstone of Canada's financial system, powering over 20 million transactions every day. Behind every tap, mobile payment, Interac e-transfer, and secure sign-on is our commitment to providing low-cost, reliable, and accessible services to Canadians from coast to coast to coast. I joined as Interac CEO in August 2023 because I'm passionate about Canada's potential to lead the global digital economy. Since joining, I've focused on enhancing the company's legacy while preparing it for the future, leading with innovation, inclusivity, and a deep commitment to serving the evolving needs of Canadians. Interac was founded in 1984 as a collaborative network of Canadian financial institutions, and our original mission was to make it easier for people to access money through ATMs. Interac products are known for being trusted, low-cost options to make and accept payments. To give you an example of what I mean, when a small or medium business accepts a payment of $500, other payment methods could cost $15, while Interac debit costs 10 cents. It is for this reason organizations such as the Canadian Federation of Independent Business have noted that Interac debit has served businesses well for many decades. Over the past 4 decades of our operation, we've been at the forefront of innovations that have transformed how Canadians access and use their money and their data. All Interac debit transactions are made via secure chip and PIN, which became the standard across Canada far earlier than many other countries. Interac was also the first domestic payment network globally to launch Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, providing access for Canadians to pay via their digital wallet. Interac e-transfer allows Canadians to send money securely in an instant, whether it's a parent sending money to their child, away at school, or a business paying its suppliers, or friends splitting a meal. Launched in 2003, Interac e-transfer made Canada one of the earliest adopters and heaviest users of person-to-person or P2P payments. Because of Interac, Canadians were able to access this payment innovation long before Venmo, PayPal, and other solutions around the world. Interac Verified ensures Canadians securely access services, including government programs, with confidence in a digital-first world. Verification and authentication is another area where Canada, enabled by technology that Interac has brought to market, is leading the way globally. We're very proud of these achievements and Interac's role in enabling Canada's payment evolution. However, we're not resting on our laurels. Interac has embarked on a bold and ambitious 3-year corporate strategy with a vision to lead Canadians to digital prosperity through key investments in fraud, in real-time payments, and in digital commerce. We understand this committee has raised important questions about Interac's governance, about the Interac e-transfer pricing, and about competition. So let me address those 3 areas. Firstly, governance. Interac's governance model reflects best corporate governance practices and a commitment to fairness, accountability, and inclusivity. Interac's board of directors includes independent directors alongside representatives from financial institutions and credit unions, ensuring balanced decision-making. While much attention is focused on the participation of Canada's largest banks, it's important to recognize that Interac's network extends far beyond them. Our participants include credit unions, regional institutions, Caisse Populaire, and fintechs, reflecting the diversity of Canada's financial ecosystem and our commitment to fostering competition. The second area of discussion of pricing. With respect to pricing of e-transfer service, financial institutions pay a fee to Interac for each transaction they send, currently determined by volume-based tiers. Our prices are wholesale rates, meaning Interac does not directly charge consumers or businesses to use Interac e-transfer. Financial institutions determine the fees they collect from their customers. I'm very pleased to report that starting in 2025, all financial institutions will pay a single flat rate fee for e-transfer transactions. Interac's goal in operating e-transfer is to ensure it's widely available and accessible for all Canadians. And the results speak for themselves. 10 years ago, Interac e-transfer processed 30 million transactions in 2012. In 2023, last year, more than 1.2 billion transactions were completed. The process of reviewing and updating Interac e-transfer pricing has been underway for over 1 year, and it was recently improved both by the Independent Committee of Interac and by the Bank of Canada. This change will ensure that Interac e-transfer can continue to grow and it can remain an attractive and competitive service for all financial institutions, big and small. And on to the last of the 3 points, competition. Interac recognizes the responsibility that comes with being a key player in the Canadian payments ecosystem. It's also important to note that the payments market in Canada is very competitive. E-transfer accounts for less than 6% of the total electronic transaction market. Interac has worked to safely expand access to the Interac e-transfer service for fintechs as well as smaller organizations, ensuring a level playing field for innovation and growth. We're pleased, very pleased, that Wealthsimple, an emerging and successful Canadian provider of digital financial services, joined the e-transfer service as a direct participant, as a direct result of this change. With the implementation of the Retail Payments Activities Act, RPAA, we plan to further support evolving market needs by enabling RPAA-regulated payment service providers to access the Interac e-transfer service. Interac has a long history of working with regulators to support a competitive and dynamic payments landscape and maintain compliance with Canada's rigorous standards. We're very pleased to be regulated by the Bank of Canada through the operation of two prominent payment systems, the Interac Intermember Network, which we call Interac Debit, and Interac e-Transfer. We work with the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, ensuring compliance with Canada's Code of Conduct for the payments card industry. And we acknowledge and we fully cooperate with the Competition Bureau as it conducts its preliminary assessment of Interac e-transfer. We view this as an opportunity to demonstrate our commitment to fairness and competition, and I'm also grateful to the committee for providing a forum to discuss the steps we've taken to support a vibrant economic financial system. So in conclusion, and to wrap up, Interac is woven into the fabric of Canadians' financial lives. We take this responsibility very seriously. For 40 years, we've been trusted to provide secure, affordable, and accessible payment solutions that empower individuals, support businesses, and drive economic growth. Interac's not just a payments operator. We're a protector and enabler of Canada's financial system. As fraud becomes more sophisticated, we're prioritizing significant new investments in technologies such as AI-driven fraud prevention and detection, and digital verification to safeguard Canadians' transactions. So we welcome the committee's questions. And we view today as a discussion as an opportunity to strengthen understanding, address concerns, reaffirm our commitment to serving Canadians with integrity and with innovation. So thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilmot. I'll now turn it over to MP Chambers to start the discussion. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wilmot, thank you for coming to committee. Appreciate that you also came in person on a difficult travel day with the weather out there. So hope you're getting used to the Canadian climate. My understanding is there's 13 members of the board, if I include yourself. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But only 4 of those would be independent. So it's not like a majority of the board. You recognize that there's still a little bit of an issue around conflicts of interest and overall governance, right?
So the Interact board governance is it's a best practice board governance structure. We do have 13 members, including myself, 4 independents and 8 shareholder nominee directors, of which 6 are from the designated systemically important banks, the large banks, the DSIBs.
Okay. And how much does any of the large Big 5 banks own of Interact?
So the shareholding of Interact as a privately held company is not disclosed, but we have many shareholders over and above the large banks of Canada.
But you can understand where the public or some policymakers might have some questions about a lack of transparency and some bona fide questions around conflicts of interest when we don't know the ownership structure, when the volume-based pricing mechanism was brought into place. The board was chaired by 2 of the largest banks in the country. We know that the volume-based pricing, it's nice to see that you announced today that you're moving sometime in 2025. But with a lack of transparency, it leaves open a lot of questions for people to question, really whose interests are being well served. Is it Interact's or is it the secret ownership structure that we don't know about?
So the Interact e-transfer pricing, the current volume-based pricing, it was reviewed and approved by the independent committee, not by the board. The independent committee is made up of independent directors only, plus myself. And then the recent move to a flat rate price, which has been in the works for about a year now, was reviewed and approved by independent committee. And then as a prominent payment system, a PPS system, we review that with the Bank of Canada. We've recently retained approval from the Bank of Canada for that new pricing schedule, and we're in the process of communicating that to the participants and reviewing our communication strategy on it.
And how soon in 2025 will you move to the new structure?
So we're in the process of informing participants. We have 230 participants. With the recent approval from Bank of Canada, we need to go through an orderly process of informing those participants. And then we'd be happy to share the details of the new pricing schedule after that time.
But it'll be a price reduction, right, for a number of players?
It'll be a flat rate structure for 230
For a number
participants.
of new entrants, it'll be a price reduction, correct?
It'll be a flat rate price structure.
If the volume-based pricing system was in effect for a long time, why change it?
So in 2012, as I said in my opening remarks, we had low adoption of e-transfer. We had 30 million transactions at that time. So one of the common commercial practices is to adopt a volume-based tier pricing in order to get the biggest players to gain mass adoption. I think that was very successful over the last 10 years. Today, I think e-transfer is almost a verb, I think, in Canada today. We're going to e-transfer my kid some money at university. And so now's the right time. And so we spent a year reviewing the global market, looked at other real-time payment systems around the world, and a flat rate structure is the appropriate structure, so that's what we're implementing in 2025.
Which would be better for competition, correct?
A flat rate structure means open access and a level playing field for all participants.
Great. but you're looking at it for a year, and we're a bit delayed. So again, when there's secret ownership structure and a governance model that may or may not be relied upon, the public will look at it and say, well, of course there's delays because the ownership structure might kind of force there to be delays. But in any event, you brought up prominent payment systems. Is Interact in compliance with the current standards as set out by the Bank of Canada? In full compliance with the standards that the Bank of Canada sets out?
So we're regulated by Bank of Canada, as you've said, with the prominent payment system. We are observing or broadly observing all of Bank of Canada's expectations on us, oversight expectations. We can't talk about any of the specifics of that due to the Payment Clearing and Settlement Act.
Right, but for example, just one of the standards is, and I apologize for cutting off, but I'm running short on time. I like to be fair to my fellow members. One of the standards is that the criteria to become a member of Interact is public. But I can't find that anywhere on Interact's website. So you're not in compliance with the Bank of Canada standards, at least with respect to that standard. Would that be correct?
So Interact e-Transfer is observing or broadly observing all oversight expectations. That the one report the Bank of Canada does produce on an annual basis states that essentially Interact is in good standing as it relates to the oversight of e-transfer.
I note the addition of broadly observing, but I'll follow up on a future round. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Chambers. MP Turnbull, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and I echo my colleagues' comments about you being here in person, Mr. Wilmot. It's great to have you here. I note that the Competition Bureau recently announced at our committee that they are looking into potential anti-competitive behavior in the e-transfer industry, and namely at Interact. Were you aware of that?
Yes, absolutely, and we're working with the Competition Bureau, and we actually have a meeting with them later on this week.
So you fully intend to cooperate with that investigation or review?
We welcome the opportunity to talk through all of the e-transfer aspects with the Competition Bureau.
Okay. We've also previously heard testimony at this committee about the challenges associated with accessing e-transfer services and some of the operational restrictions that Interact actually imposes, or at least that's what some of our fintech companies called your practices highly burdensome and anti-competitive. That's what they said, not my words. Should the Competition Bureau approach you to discuss these practices, how will you respond to those concerns?
So Interact is committed to broadening access to e-transfer. Today we have 230 participants, direct participants to the e-transfer system. We've worked with both FINTRAC and the Canadian Investment Regulatory Oversight Authority to enable investment dealers as well as money service bureaus to directly connect. It's really great that one of Canada's fantastic success stories in the fintech space, Wealthsimple, took that up, and they have directly connected to enable their business and provide differentiation for them. So we welcome broadening access.
So, and is your new announced, I don't know whether you've actually officially announced it, but I see some articles that I've flagged here on a flat fee pricing structure that you're moving forward with. Have you officially announced that?
No, we haven't. So e-transfer will be priced on a flat rate fee in 2025, and we're in process of communicating that to the 230 participants.
And is that in line with what you just said, which is that you're committed to broadening access? How does that broaden access?
I think it helps broaden the access. We're a regulated payment system, therefore it's not up to us who can join e-transfer. We do need to ensure that Bank of Canada is supportive of that. But flat rate pricing, which is a common pricing schedule for real-time payment systems around the world, will clearly enable and help open access.
And then you had said that the Bank of Canada actually approved this. Is that correct? And when did they approve it?
So the Bank of Canada recently approved it. We, as with any pricing change for any of the prominent payment systems, we go through a lot of detail with the Bank of Canada to explain why we're making a change, what the benefits are of that, the consequences of doing that. And there's a good length of time in order to ensure that everything's very well understood before the approval is given by the Bank of Canada. But they've recently provided us that approval, which gives us the green light to go ahead and talk to our participants.
So, and that was really recent? Like how recent? Within the last couple of weeks? Within the last few days? How recent? Just so I'm aware.
Yeah, it was. So, as I said before, we started this process a year ago.
Yep.
And it was within the last 4 weeks that Bank of Canada provided approval.
Okay, Chair, do I have any more time left? Or?
You do. You have about 2 minutes.
Oh, wow. I'm doing very well. So we've heard about your volume-based pricing model, which was how you've been doing things for quite some time. Help me understand how a flat fee is going to help those smaller players in the space, the fintechs that are trying to disrupt and work within this space. Like, how is it going to help them access this and create a more level playing field, as you said earlier?
So volume-based pricing starts at a higher level. Let's say it starts at 100 to begin with and goes to 50 next and then goes to 10 as a third step. Just take that as an example. And so as you start your volumes, they would be priced at 100. And then when you get past a certain level, it goes to 50. When you get past that level, it goes to 10. And so smaller players would be paying at 100. Or maybe at 50 if they're medium-sized. So with a flat rate pricing, and then that flat rate pricing would have a starting point that is much lower, and say that starting point was 15, as an example. So your first transaction would be 15, your second and last transaction would be 15. However many you go, it will always be 15.
So that will certainly help those smaller players, I would think. But it's still a strategic decision. So I'm assuming you made that decision with your shareholders in mind as well? Like, it must be better for business? Or is it, are you taking a loss on this new fee structure? I wouldn't think so. So is it just better business practice from your perspective? Is it serving your shareholders?
Yeah, to your point, it's a big move for us. And so that's why it took a year to ensure that we really understood all the implications of doing this, and also to ensure that we understood globally what was happening. So it was then reviewed and approved by the independent committee. So the board was never involved. The independent committee gave us the approval. And at that point, we then informed the board of what we're doing. At that point, we then went to Bank of Canada. And pretty much that's where we're sitting now. We're preparing all the fee schedules, communications for 230 participants. And then we're looking at our communication strategy at that point afterwards.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay, la parole est à vous.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Savard-Tremblay. You have the floor. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. You pronounce your name Wilmot? Yes. Can you hear the interpretation? The interpretation is on the English channel. Yes, this is the English channel. That should be the right channel. I'm speaking French to see if you're picking up the English translation. Can you, or interpretation, I should say. Can you hear the interpretation? Yes, you can hear it. You can confirm that you can hear me before I actually start asking my question, so that I don't have to repeat myself. Can you hear me in English? Yes, I can. I'll take a chance then. So the testimony of the Competition Bureau said that there was an agreement Sorry, go ahead. Okay, So, during the testimony by the Competition Bureau, we heard that the Bureau had a consent agreement from 1995 to 2020. Can you hear me? No, unfortunately, I can't. We're just going to take a second. The clerk is going to go make sure that it works.
Bravo. On va suspendre juste une minute.
We're going to suspend for just a minute.
In English, and then turn up your volume, and then see if you can.
Merci.
This is the interpreter on. Hear everything that I'm saying. Perfect. So I think that your microphone is on, and so you can't hear as well if it's on. There you go. So that should be better. So during the testimony by the Competition Bureau, we heard that the Bureau had a consent agreement with Interac from 1996 to 2020. So with regard to things that go against competition in the financial markets, and it was relevant, the agreement was relevant to that, and I'm sure you're aware of it. But why isn't there a similar agreement, not just about the relevant financial markets, but for e-transfers?
And the consent agreement from 1996 to 2020 that was regarding the Interac debit service. Interac e-transfer was not included in that. However, the Competition Bureau was involved in the structuring of Interac's corporation and the governance model around that. And so today we are now talking to the Competition Bureau about their initial assessment into e-transfer.
Mais pourquoi ne pas avoir couvert les virements Interac, justement?
And so why weren't e-transfers covered?
I can't talk to the Competition Bureau's decisions in the mid-90s.
On nous a aussi informé que quand des
We were also told that as there are financial institutions other than banks, so financial institutions that are not banks, like the fintech companies. So when they requested access to consumers' accounts, the banks imposed the use of the Interac network. But the banks are also major shareholders of Interac. So I wonder whether you think that it's a fundamental problem with regard to good competition.
Thank you for the question. So fintech companies have a number of different ways that they could move money between the banks. So they could move money through electronic funds transfer. EFT is a very common method around the world for fintechs, through pre-authorized debit, bill payments, and e-transfer. We welcome access to e-transfer. That's why we have 230 participants. We've worked to broaden that access, and FINTRAC and the Canadian Investment Regulatory Oversight Authority have enabled us to widen that access. We work with Wealthsimple to make that possible. It's not I would not claim it's an easy process. I mean, you're connecting to a prominent payment system, so there are very high levels of expectation. Not just technology, from a business rule point of view, a regulatory perspective, a security perspective. So it's not a small undertaking to connect to e-transfer.
Vous dites, puis pour faire le lien avec ma question précédente.
So I'd like to link back to my earlier question. You were saying that the Competition Bureau had examined the governance model of Interac, and the Competition Bureau also told us here in committee that there should be more oversight to find out what happens in the board of directors. And we know that at Interac, the Canada's banks are your major shareholders. And of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is the information that we have. So should we then conclude that in order to have competition in e-transfers, that there should be more oversight of boards of directors?
So Interac is very committed to working with the Competition Bureau and to answering their questions. We're meeting with them later this week. Their initial assessment will work, closely with them. The governance structure of Interac, there are 13 directors, of which 6 are designated systemically important banks, DSIB, so less than half of the directors. And there are certain decisions like pricing, which never go to the board of directors. They stay in the independent committee. The independent committee, I'm a member of it, and there are 4 independent directors. So we have best practice corporate governance in place, and that was put in place in 2018.
Si je comprends bien pour le conseil
If I
d'administration.
understood correctly, yes, for the board of directors, but the shareholders are a majority in the majority banks.
So Interac has a wide range of shareholders, including the designated systemically important banks. But it has a cross-section of payment processors, Caisse Populaire, credit unions, newer entrant fintechs who are our shareholders as well.
Merci, Monsieur Savard-Tremblay.
Thank you, Mr. Savard-Tremblay. Ms. Dance, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. I'm new to the committee, so I'm actually going to take a couple of steps back here just to make sure that I completely understand what I'm asking so I don't get anything confused here. So my riding is Elmwood Transcona, and people are struggling daily to afford groceries, cost of living, and all that stuff. So every dollar really matters. So when I'm looking at, when I've heard what you've said tonight, you talked a little bit about the payer as well as the recipient when it comes to transferring money. So if I'm understanding this correctly, both the payer pays to transfer money and the recipient pays to receive the money. Am I understanding that correctly?
So Interac e-transfer prices the service to the 230 participants.
Okay.
And we do not set any prices for consumers or businesses. So what those 230 participants then charge their customers, we have no insight to. So it is a wholesale business-to-business arrangement for e-transfer.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just trying to figure out how this all works in the big scheme of things, because earlier tonight you talked about how there's 20 million transactions happen every day, right? So, and if I'm basing it on the fact that you went from 100 to 50 down to 15 cents per transaction, we're looking at about $3 million a day, which I'll be honest with you, I tried to use my calculator to figure out what that would be in a year, and I'm pretty sure that's over $1 billion a year in fees back and forth. So I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from. And when I'm hearing that we're talking about how it's not regulated, that we don't know what those numbers are and what you're offering, going from your volume-based tiers now to this flat rate fee, how can Canadians know that we're actually paying a fee that's reasonable and that isn't padding the pockets when you guys reported a 13% profit last year?
So Interac is a privately held company, so we don't disclose our financial results. One of the surveys that we do surveys on our products to ensure we understand how consumers are using them. E-transfer is free to 95% of Canadians. So 5% of Canadians pay for their e-transfers. And that's because those 230 participants, they will bundle the pricing of e-transfer into a number of different products that you and I would use from the financial institution. So only 5% of Canadians actually pay for e-transfers, and I think that is part of the reason for its mass adoption and success in the marketplace.
So when you talk about going to the flat rate fee, that's going to make sure that the major banks, credit unions, Caisse Populaire, all of them are all paying the exact same amount, correct?
That's accurate.
That's accurate. Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this completely. So when everybody's paying the same amount and those fees will be lowered, what is that going to look like for And those numbers are going to continue to go back up, right? Because I would assume every year you're going to look for a little bit of an increase. Will that mean that at some point those smaller businesses are going to be back to paying what they were paying before?
So we're committed to, Interact's committed to the flat rate price schedule for e-transfer. As volume gets bigger, assuming we do our job well, we should be able to gain efficiencies in our system. And so I don't see prices going up for e-transfer. I see efficiencies that would enable prices to stay as they are or even perhaps come down. And as you look at jurisdictions such as Australia or the UK, India, Brazil, you see that scale can really benefit the ecosystem. And that's a question of getting the right technology in place. And in fact, the real-time rail, RTR, will help to modernize the payments infrastructure in Canada. And a modern infrastructure enables efficiencies and use the latest technologies such as public cloud or AI. And that can help to make a system more secure and more efficient, which by definition should mean that we can maintain prices or even lower them at some point in the future.
When you talk about the monopoly in some of these other countries, or when you talk about what the other countries are doing, do they have a monopoly like you do here in Canada, or is there some competition there that might allow them to keep their prices or their fees lower?
Yeah, so around the world, about 50 countries have put in real-time payment settlement system, a new one that's for low-value payments. And there are other payment rails also available to all of these participants. They could be a batch system, a high-value payment system, as well as this low-value settlement system. And what you see fintechs do is that they'll have different products on different rails with different prices. And so consumers and businesses will then access these different sort of sophisticated products. And so it's really bringing in another opportunity for building payment products on top of e-transfer and the real-time rail.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, MP Rempel-Garner. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned that you are going to a flat rate, but you weren't clear with my colleague on whether or not any of your members would see a reduction in fees. Will any of your members or users see a reduction in fees when you go to the flat rate? Mr. Wilmot.
Thank you for the question. The flat rate will be introduced in 2025. We have just received approval from Bank of Canada. We are in the process of communicating that to the 230 participants. We don't disclose the rates as a privately held company for those 230 participants. And when we have discuss that with the participants, and then we'll also move towards what our communication strategy will be for that flat rate scheme.
So just to be clear, though, are you posturing, are you saying that every single one of your users will pay the same rate?
So the flat rate fee will replace the volume-based fee. And each of the 230 participants will receive a new fee schedule accordingly.
Okay, so a fee schedule. So it sounds to me when you say that like you're obfuscating a bit. Will there be hidden fees? Will anyone see a reduction in fees? Or is this just kind of a shell game to placate a potential Competition Bureau investigation?
The pricing review of e-transfer has been in place for over a year. It was one of the first things that I initiated when I took over as CEO. It's been a highly complex exercise. We want to make sure it's fit for purpose for the next 10 years, as the current schedule has been for the last 10 years. And we really need to ensure that we had the Bank of Canada fully on board with what we're doing
would it
as
be
well.
fair to say that none of your 230 participants will see a reduction in fees?
The flat rate schedule is it's a different fee schedule for all 230, and they will receive those
mean?
schedules.
Does that mean that there'll be like hidden fees or different access fees associated? So you just said that you went to a flat rate, but now there's going to be different structures for 230 different participants. How does that work?
The current volume-based pricing that I was explaining earlier that goes through the tiers, top tier, middle tier, lower tier, that means that each of the 230 participants have a different economic model for using e-transfer. With the flat rate pricing, everybody will have the same economic model.
So will anyone see a reduction in pricing?
The flat rate pricing, we need to communicate it to the participants, the 230 participants. And after that, we'll then look at our communication strategy.
And the reason why I ask is our committee is being tasked with coming up with recommendations on a wide variety of areas, including the lack of competitiveness in this area. So if you're signaling to this committee that there is no reduction in pricing, I would just challenge your assertion that somehow this curiously timed move to a flat rate system would somehow enhance access for other players into the system. Prove me wrong.
The 2025 fee schedule for e-transfer has been worked on for over a year. It was one of the first things that I initiated at the end of 2023.
How will it make things more competitive? So what I'm taking away from this is that nobody is going to see a fee reduction. There's no significant changes in your governance. So that leaves us to look at recommendations of perhaps some different types of intervention to spur competition in the area. Has the government approached you suggesting that they may be looking at intervening by asking you to open your network for interoperability for other e-transfer programs? Has the government approached you with that recommendation yet?
We're working with Payments Canada closely on the real-time rail. The Retail Payments Activities Act is going to open up the real-time rail to many payment service providers. E-transfer is going to be settled
what is the timing
on the
that?
real-time rail.
What has the government communicated to you in terms of timing for implementation?
I believe the Bank of Canada has stated that the target is to have testing to start towards the end of 2026 for real-time rail.
Okay, and in terms of other recommendations, has the government approached you suggesting that they would be open to enabling blockchain-based payment systems or other decentralized payment networks as competitive alternatives to Interac? Have they said, get ready for this, guys?
We have not had any conversations about a blockchain-enabled payment system with the government.
Okay. And just to be clear, with the opportunity you have in front of committee members here who are looking at recommendations to the government or future governments on how to deal with the lack of competition in this particular sector, will any of your participants actually experience lower rates as a result of the move to your different fee cycle or structure? My apologies.
So one of the statements I made earlier, I think, was that 6% of electronic transfers are on e-transfer. So 94% are on other methods, electronic funds, EFT, electronic funds transfer, pre-authorized debit, bill payment. There are other competitors in the market, PayPal, Apple. And so there are a number of different ways to move money or accept payments, whether it's person-to-person or a small, medium business accepting payment.
How is the independent committee of Interac compensated? What is their compensation structure?
So the independent directors are compensated. The compensation is set by the governance committee. The board does not set any of that compensation, and we don't disclose the compensation for executive officers like myself or for directors.
So we would have no way of knowing how they would be motivated to make decisions on a pricing schedule as parliamentarians then. Would that be a correct assessment?
We don't disclose compensation for executive officers or for directors of Interact.
I'm not looking for amounts. I'm just looking at the decision-making structure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, MP Rempel-Garner. I'll now turn it over to MP Gahir.
Great. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Wilmot for appearing. So I was actually a little bit confused as well as the NDP member about the structure, but her questions actually clarified it. Mr. Wilmot, you mentioned that, you charge banks or the participants a fee based on an arrangement that's going to change, and what the participants charge to their customers is up to them. You said that 95% of customers pay for their do not pay for their e-transfer. Only 5% of customers do, and it's because, as you said, they bundle the e-transfer prices into other services they offer. So in effect, the customers are paying for e-transfers, maybe not directly, but because of the checking account that they've signed up for, they might be paying as a bundled service for e-transfer, correct?
So Interact prices e-transfer on a wholesale basis. It's what I would call a B2B2C, a business to consumer. So we're the business-to-business part of that. We will set in 2025 a flat rate, and then participants, the 230 participants, they'll take that rate and they'll make their own commercial decisions on whether, and those commercial decisions will be highly complex, I'm sure, but they make those decisions. We don't have insight into that.
Have you done any analysis? And I guess this question is going to be very similar to what Mr. Rempel-Garner had asked, but do you have any assurances from the businesses that you charge for your service that the end user will see a reduction in fees? Have you done any work on that analysis, meetings with your participants?
No, Interact's been focused on the wholesale rate, the B2B rate, and ensuring that it will support the continued growth. We've had a 40 times growth over the last 10 years. We would love to see a 40 times growth over the next 10 years. And so we'd have to set a price that the participants can work with and that works for them. And so we all expect digital services at a better price and more convenient and faster all the time. And Interact is no different from any other fintech, that we are striving to meet that expectation of the market.
Because my worry is that it'll end up being like credit card rewards, where the wealthy that spend their credit cards a little bit more will get more rewards, and it's the people that don't spend as much that will have to pay for it, that are usually lower in the socioeconomic rung. It's the same thing with Interact in a way as well, no? Just to finish that thought, because I have friends that work at banks, they're all bank managers, and the credit cards, the checking accounts, the saving accounts that are offered, the ones that are more high end, the ones that have a higher fee or ask you to hold more money in the bank account, that's where Interact is free. But it's some of those lower accounts where there's the beginner accounts, starter accounts, the ones where you don't have to hold a certain amount of money in your account, maybe because you don't have that money. Those are usually the accounts that will charge you for the Interact service.
So Interact focuses in on the wholesale B2B rate, and we try and ensure that it's going to be not try and ensure. We will ensure it is a flat rate in 2025, and we will ensure that we look to continue to support the notion that 95% of Canadians don't pay for e-transfer, so that it gets widely used, and it's an easy way to accept money as a small, medium business, and it's also an easy way to transfer money person to person.
So I agree with all that. I just don't want the bottom 5% to have to then subsidize the top 95%. Is sort of my worry. And obviously, Interact is adopted by a lot of users in Canada. You have a lot of participants. You have all the big banks. You were founded by the banks, and I think there's heft there. So if you throw that heft around, I think there can be an arrangement where the final end user sees a reduction in fees.
It's going to make all of that possible by having a flat rate fee for e-transfers, and then the 230 participants can make their own decisions commercially in terms of how to improve customer service and improve the customer value proposition.
Chair, how much time do I have left?
You're about done, Mr. Gaillard. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Monsieur Savard-Tremblay.
Merci. Bien, tout d'abord,
Thank you. I'm curious about something, Mr. Wilmot. Earlier, you were saying that there were concerns with regard to security on the part of fintechs. Did I understand you correctly?
What I stated is that connecting to e-transfer is not an easy task. It requires security, regulatory, operational, as well as technological effort. And so it's an undertaking that needs to be well thought through for people who do want to directly connect to e-transfer.
Mais est-ce que y voyez-vous un frein, par exemple?
But do you see that as something that will slow business down to have to go through that technology if there are concerns about security?
I think that fintechs have a variety of different options that they could deploy. So, as I said, around the world, you see a lot of fintechs use the EFT or electronic funds transfer rail, and they provide product sets on that enable direct connect to bank accounts. And e-transfer is a prominent payment system. We take that responsibility very seriously. We want to meet the expectations, oversight expectations of the Bank of Canada. And so we want to be very careful to ensure the integrity of the system. A payment network is only as good as the trust that is in it. If people trust e-transfer, and I think they do, Canadians do, they use it as a verb, I'll e-transfer you. The trust really exists, but if payments got lost or payments were scammed or there was fraud, there would be a rapid deterioration in trust and people would stop using e-transfer. And so we really need to ensure that any participant who is directly connected to e-transfer has all of the necessary skills, capabilities, and meets the expectation that a prominent payment system deserves.
Mais comme vous le savez, quand on développe des nouvelles
As you
technologies,
know, when new financial technology is developed and proposed to consumers, it's important to know whether the consumer will actually accept the price. And to know that, you have to look at the prices that are already in effect and then compete. That's what price competition is. But when you change your fees, and you said that you're making a decision about that, but when the change in Interac fees is not public. So that means that, in fact, your fee system is quite opaque. So how can we foster healthy competition when potential competitors cannot know how a quasi-monopoly sets its prices?
So the e-transfer flat rate fee to be introduced in 2025 will encourage new entrants onto the e-transfer platform due to a lower entry cost for e-transfer. There are a number of different methods that fintechs can access in order to enable their service. And I think that the possibilities and the opportunities for fintechs are there for them, and they have the ability to really focus in on what the value proposition is for consumers and for businesses in order to adopt that technology. The second thing I'd say is that we have 230 participants. There are about 100 million transactions a month being processed on e-transfer. Clearly, the 230 participants see that as a valuable way to move money. We don't want to lose that. We want to ensure that all 230 participants still believe this is a good way to support their value propositions to customers. They don't switch it to another rail, which they absolutely can. And so we will be competitively priced to ensure that that happens, and that flat rate fee will enable the 230 participants, I hope, to stay with the system and for us to broaden access to increase the number of direct participants.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmot. And before I turn it over to MP Dance, just you said they can move to another rail. They absolutely can do that. What are the other rails in Canada, and how many participants do they have? Or
if you look at payment methods, there's paper payment methods, card payment methods, and electronic payment methods. The card is typically credit and debit. The electronic is electronic funds transfer, EFT, that would happen typically on the ACSS, the automated clearing system or batch system. And that EFT platform is used by fintechs in order to enable money to move from A to B. It's also possible to work with larger technology companies, data providers such as Plaid or Flinks, to work with PayPal in order to provide different propositions. So there are a number of different ways that fintechs could actually move money for their customers.
Okay. But for e-transfers, basically, the other ways imply like credit cards, like you've mentioned, for instance, or PayPal or other companies. But for e-transfers, who would be, you would say, your biggest competitor in Canada?
So for e-transfers, it will be EFT, debit cards. It's ways of accepting money or moving money directly between bank accounts.
Okay. Okay, so basically the service you're providing is just you're relaying the information between the banks, so between the participants. You're saying in your ledger change that, in your ledger change that, and you're making the connection between the two, if I'm simplifying.
I think so. So account-based payments, account to an account, a source of good funds on one end, a destination of good funds on another end, and in order to ensure that it's a direct account-to-account payment. And that's what we're talking about. So a debit card, debit rail, a EFT rail, e-transfer as a product, they enable this account-to-account. And when RTR, real-time rail, comes, that will be another capability that fintechs will be able to use in order to move directly from one account to another account.
Can I just confirm how much time I get?
Get about 2:30.
2:30? Okay, sorry. So I just, again, I feel like I'm always trying to clarify things for myself. So I just want to just check, do you recommend a fee that your 230 businesses charge individuals, or is there any type of, suggested price that the bank, Caisse Populaire, credit union would charge the consumer?
Interac is not involved at all on recommending an end user price.
Okay. And so with that being said, they can charge Canadians whatever they want.
Interac is focused on the business-to-business wholesale pricing. The 230 participants who provide financial services to consumers and small business, 230, that's a lot of companies competing in a market of 40 million people, 30 million economically active people. There's a lot of competition in order to ensure, consumers and businesses can choose whether they want to take those financial services from a highly localized, smaller financial institution like a credit union that plays a very important role in Canadian society, or they want to take it from a national provider like one of the designated systemically important banks, the DSIBs, in Canada.
So even if you were to say I belong to a credit union and currently I'm paying $1, but they're only paying, say, 20 cents for each electronic fund transfer that I send, even if you lower it for them to, say, 15 cents or 10 cents, whatever that number is, that might not mean that it's going to make any difference for myself or Canadians in general, right? Because they're going to continue to charge whatever they want.
the e-transfer flat rate fee will benefit the smallest players, so the smallest credit unions.
Right.
And I think in the credit
But
union...
not necessarily Canadians, sorry.
Yes, no, absolutely Canadians. So consumers and small businesses who are served by the credit unions. And the credit unions are served by aggregation companies like Essential One, as an example, that help to make e-transfer easier to consume and easier to operate. They play a fundamentally very important role because some of these credit unions are small. They offer, one town can rely heavily on a credit union, and so the centrals play a very important role in that.
Sorry, I'm conscious of my time. I just want to ask. So when you put your flat rate fee program in place in 2025, will that number, whatever that number is, will Canadians know what that number is? Like, will that be public knowledge?
So we are working through what our communication strategy is for the new flat rate pricing. So we are first informing the participants. After that, we will execute on the communication strategy that we're currently reviewing. And once we review that, and then we'll execute on that. But there are many markets around the world that do publish their real-time settlement fee schedules. So if Canada did that, it would be following global best practice. But we have just received Bank of Canada approval for a flat rate schedule. We haven't yet communicated to the participants. So the right order to ensure stability of the system and there are no surprises for anybody is that we follow these steps. So I'm not saying we're not going to do that, but we're reviewing that. And I do understand global best practice is that you do transparently publish it on your website. I understand that. So we are discussing that, and then we'll execute on that in 2025.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, MP Den. So I will now turn to the Conservative. I don't know, it's not clear. Mr. Généreux, okay. And colleagues, just so you know, we'll end the meeting at 7:30 as was originally planned. So you understand we've got about 20 minutes left of questions. So, Monsieur Généreux.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur Wilmot.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wilmot. I think your accent indicates that you're from England. Is that right?
Oui, c'est bien ça.
So how do things work as far as competition goes in England? I mean, is there far more competition in Europe than in Canada?
The UK and Europe, two different things, and but both have pursued what I'd call open banking or consumer-driven banking, as we're talking about here. Through payment service directives. So they're actually on the third generation of a payment service directive, PSD3.
Which is not the case in Canada.
I'm sorry?
Which is not the case in Canada.
That's right. The consumer-driven banking framework that we're working through right now that comes together with RTR as well as RPAA, I think provides a 2 or 3 year path for us where we're really at a point that we can accelerate open access, we can accelerate innovation, and now it's about executing on the 2 or 3 year roadmap that's been put in place.
Dans votre discours d'ouverture, vous avez mentionné.
In your opening statement, you said that you were very innovative and a precursor in the field, but am I right that you're actually behind all of the new developments with open banking and cyber currencies, etc.? Because you have some catching up to do, don't you?
Interac has innovated ahead of the world in many areas. I think the latest area is around business request to pay on account to account, around verification and authentication capabilities, around AI-enabled fraud detection to avoid scams. And there's a long history, such as with the digital wallets that I talked about, as well as with chip and PIN. So we have a strong innovation department. Our strategy is about bringing innovative new use cases on our existing platforms today. So Interac has a strong innovation history that we plan to continue going forward.
La Banque du Canada vient de vous autoriser. Vous avez dit, vous avez pas eu...
The Bank of Canada just authorized you, and you haven't had time to share it with your participants, or your participants or your clients, I imagine. So you haven't had a chance to transfer the information that the Bank of Canada has authorized you to go toward the flat rate. But what we heard from prior testimony is that it can go from 6 to 46 cents per transaction. But earlier you said that a flat rate, ABC, low, middle, and high, I imagine that's what the flat rates are, the tiers. My question is that the clients in each of those volume tiers, will there be a real difference among your participants? So the flat rate within the 3 tiers that you mentioned, that flat rate will be different, I imagine. Is that true?
The flat rate for e-transfer will be flat, regardless of whether there is one transaction or 100 million transactions. It will be the same price. There is only one price, and it will be flat.
Okay. Est-ce que c'est possible de déposer au comité...
All right. Would it be possible to submit to the committee the structure for your fee rates according to the flat rate after you provide it to your members, of course?
Yes, we would be happy to do that.
J'ai encore du temps, Monsieur le Président?
Do I still have time, Mr. Chair? About 30 seconds, Mr. Généreux. What percentage do you have of the market that you operate in? So in the Interac e-transfer debit market, what is your percentage of the market?
According to the Payments Canada 2023 report, Interac e-transfer has a 6% market share of electronic payments in Canada.
I don't get that, but anyway.
Merci, Monsieur Généreux.
Thank you, Mr. Généreux. Mr. Aria?
Ms. Wilmot, you use the words strong innovation history, and you also use the words innovated ahead of the world. How do you compare yourself with UPI?
Well, I think UPI is the world's best real-time payment system.
Okay. How old is UPI?
UPI is 10 years old.
And how old is Interac?
Interac e-transfer is 21 years old.
So, 21 years. You said that we are the first in the world in so many systems, we are the first in the world in innovation, we are the greatest, etc. How come a global South country, where literacy rate is still low, and we are a G7 country, the most developed country, why is that we have to learn from them?
Canadians could send money from one person to another with an email address in 2003. India or Malaysia or Australia or UK or Brazil could not do that. We were the first country in the world to do that.
Let's talk about email transfer. Suppose I want to transfer $15,000 from my CIBC account on the street to my Scotiabank account on the same street. How many days it will take?
I don't know.
There you go. That's the banking system. But you're almost saying that, with e-transfer, you can always do instantaneously. We did. Email system is outdated. And a lot of, you talked about the ETF, etc. A lot of ETF is limited to the banking hours, correct? EFTs.
No, I don't believe so.
So the direct deposit, pre-authorized rebates can happen anytime?
I believe so. They're 24/7.
Okay, so what you're saying is that these things can take any time. Why is that? A lot of things, for example, let's get talk about the pay direct. I don't know whether your infrastructure provides help for the direct deposit system. Does it?
E-transfer has real-time availability of funds as a result of using the high-value payment system at Payments Canada called LINX. And it means that when you send money to your son or daughter at university, they get it seconds later. When a small or medium business accepts money, they get it seconds later as well.
But it is a limited amount. Anyway, coming back, November 1st, you had an outage, or whatever you call the technical glitch. Was it due to any cyber attack?
So the e-transfer degradation as service, which was not an outage, was where e-transfers were taking longer than a lot of people expected. And because it was rent day, it had a particular painful experience for a lot of customers. It was not to do with a cyber attack.
Okay. A colleague of mine asked about the blockchain technologies. Do you think that blockchain technologies are going to disrupt your system?
I think emerging technologies are always something that we need to consider, whether it's the public cloud, AI, blockchain, or whatever is the next emerging technology after that. There is no doubt in my mind, personally, that blockchain is going to play an important role in the movement of money in the future.
Okay. We had a witness in the last time the committee. He was the chief operating officer of a software company. He said, let me quote, Interac offerings are not progressing at a comparable rate to other notable payment providers around the world. Comparing Interac with providers from the United Kingdom, Sweden, India, Brazil, for example, we would find that in under 3 years, these countries rolled out cheaper, faster, more modern, and feature-packed alternatives to their existing payment networks without significant disturbance. What are your comments on this?
E-transfer is a household name and a verb in Canada. It is used by everybody in Canada to send to their loved ones, for small, medium businesses to accept money. And that is a sign of a payment system that is adopted by many, used by many, trusted by many. Now, the PIX network in Brazil, the UPI network in India, the Swish platform in Sweden, they're all fantastic platforms as well. But e-transfer is more widely used than those systems.
That, you keep repeating e-transfer is more widely used by most Canadians because we don't have any we don't have any alternative. People, we have to use, for example, if I have to use phone, either I have to use Rogers, Bell, or TELUS because we don't have any alternative. So you keep saying that most Canadians use this because we lack alternatives, right?
E-transfer represents 6% of electronic transfers. Debit rails are used to move money. EFT rails are used to move money as well as e-transfer. It's only 6% of total electronic transactions. There are alternatives in the marketplace.
And, because of you keep saying that you are a private company, so you can't disclose the ownership structure or the profitability or anything, but you are a unique player in Canadian market, right?
We're a unique player that provides e-transfer, debit, and verification services.
And
when you put all three of those together, absolutely, we're a unique player.
Bulk of the ownership is with the major Canadian banks?
So Interac shareholding is across many different financial institutions and ecosystem players.
I'm talking about who are the, let's put it that way. The number of shareholders, big shareholders are limited, correct?
We have large shareholders, we have small shareholders.
Yeah, exactly. The large shareholders probably control bulk of the shareholding voting rights, correct?
So we have large shareholders, small shareholders. As a privately held company, we don't disclose the shareholding.
This is the problem we have. The way it has been structured is that we can't question the ownership. We can't question your profitability. We can't question your revenue sources and the cost structure because you always can claim private. But that's how the system is. Anyway, Thanks, Chair. I know I over my time.
But it was interesting, Mr. Arias, so I've allowed you to pursue. But I'll just ask one follow-up question. You keep mentioning, Mr. Wilmot, 6%. So of all electronic payments are made through the Interac e-transfer system. But you include credit card payments, right?
Credit card payments are inside of that.
So,
6%.
but you keep using the example of sending money to your son or daughter in university. How can I use my MasterCard to send them money if they need? The only option I have is really Interac e-transfer, isn't it?
So
if you exclude credit card payments, what's the percentage that you guys have of all transactions?
So there are 18.5 billion transactions, including credit cards. If I understand correctly, I think credit cards are approximately 6 billion transactions. So 1.2 billion transactions of 12 billion transactions, approximately 10%. And debit cards and EFT are clear channels to move money between businesses and between people as well.
Okay, but for direct deposit and so, but and you don't you need to be within the same institution usually? If I want to send money to someone who's using a different banking institution, I'm with Desjardins, you're with BMO. What's the options that I have? What are the options I have?
Debit rails as well as EFT rails and e-transfer are all possible for fintechs to provide services to businesses and people to move from one account to another account at a different financial institution.
Okay, but I think it's pertinent to remove the credit card payments in the examples when you were talking about sending money between Canadians, transferring money.
Yeah, and I apologize for that. And all the numbers that I quote are the Payments Canada 2023 report. So that's the source that I'm using.
We'll have a look at it, and I'll yield the floor to Mr. Chambers. But all that I'm hearing makes me all the more hopeful that at some point we're going to get new technologies like blockchain that will allow for peer-to-peer, permissionless way to move value around and move money around. And I think it's coming because the legacy financial system has failed Canadians in many ways. Mr. Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's exactly what some of the concerns that we have, and you're pointing your finger on it. There isn't really an alternative in the system. So in many ways, Visa is being brought in front of the Department of Justice, or Department of Justice filed a complaint against Visa. Visa controls 60% of the debit market in the U.S. Mr. Wilmot, how much of the debit market does Interac control in Canada?
Interac's debit at the point of sale.
All debit transactions in Canada, what percentage are controlled by Interac?
So Interac's debit at the point of sale, the majority of debit transactions at the point of sale are through Interac.
Not majority, like percent. It's like 100%, correct?
I don't have the percentage.
Okay. So here's the kind of broad strokes. This is kind of what I'm hearing. We have a secret ownership group. We have a secret fee schedule. We have legitimate questions about competition in the sector. And now the same ownership group is responsible, who got a sole source contract, to deliver real-time rail, which is directly going to attack the profit pool of that ownership group. So you can understand how, with this kind of cloud of secrecy, how policymakers are questioning, help me understand why we don't make a very radical recommendation, which would be to say, maybe Interac should be its own company. Maybe the financial institution should not be able to own the company. Help me understand why we shouldn't make that recommendation.
Interac worked hard and long for the new corporate structure that we have that was put in place in 2018. That corporate structure does follow governance best practice, has a number of committees that the board is not involved in, whether it's compensation or pricing or other matters, including my own compensation with the HRCC, the HR and Compensation Committee. So we have best in practice governance capabilities. And with RTR, the real-time rail that Interac is involved with Payments Canada, we delivered the first portion of that RTR
just
project.
on RTR, we're behind schedule, are we not?
I think the original schedule that Payments Canada worked to, we're behind that schedule.
Right. So we're behind schedule in delivering a significant economic benefit to users, right? Like I understand in your previous role that you've identified that this is a significant economic benefit to get to real-time rail, correct?
Absolutely.
Like
Real-time settlement systems are an economic flywheel for
Yeah, my
economies.
understanding is that 2.7% the GDP could be increased if we move to real-time rail. Is that, am I about correct on that?
I don't know where that calculation comes from, but there's economic benefit for
Okay.
real-time settlement systems.
So we're delayed in delivering on real-time rail, which will provide significant benefits to the economy by lowering the profit pool, the transaction profit pool of the owners of Interact, the economic owners of Interact. But as I mentioned before, it's secret, a secret fee schedule, and we're behind schedule on delivering something that will make the banks, your owners, less money. If I could leave you with one recommendation, it would be help us with transparency so that we don't make unwise or very radical regulatory recommendations, because in the absence of any information, we're left with what looks to be, you know, an ownership structure who is working really hard to protect its profit pool. And the issue is not with Interact. The issue is with your secret ownership structure and the banks that we have no idea how they influence decision-making at Interact. So I think I'm really bumping up against my time, but you know, I appreciate you coming here today, and if I could leave one thing with you, it would be please more transparency, because I think otherwise we're left just to wonder how these decisions are being made. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Chambers, and I'll echo the sentiment of MP Chambers. And if you, Mr. Wilmot, have anything you'd like to submit in writing as we go forward, please feel free to do so. We're more than open to receiving your submission. Colleagues, we're nearing, and I know you have a flight to catch, so at 9. So I've said we would stop at 7:30. If anyone has a pressing question they'd like to ask, otherwise I will adjourn the meeting. Mr. Van Bynen.
Chair, I'm not disputing the organizational structure. I am concerned about the market dominance, and I think that's the issue that is a concern within this committee. And the one quick solution would be to require divestiture by the major players so that that's an independent corporation. So how much would you attribute the asset base of the current organization with its legacy software and hardware, and because you are the infrastructure, you are the ecosystem for these types of payments. So how much do we have in terms of legacy costs that have been recovered or that are to be recovered? And how would you address that market dominance? Go to the market dominance question first.
So as we've discussed in committee, there are other alternatives to e-transfer. And if we exclude credit cards from electronic payments, I believe e-transfer is about 10%. When we look at debit, electronic funds transfer, EFT, and e-transfer. So there are alternatives, and the 230 participants see real value in e-transfer, and so use e-transfer. To your other question of legacy technology, e-transfer was introduced in 2003, 21 years ago. And with older systems, there is what we would call technical debt. The technical debt due to older infrastructure. One of the great opportunities for all of us with the real-time rail is to move to new technology infrastructure for e-transfer as well. And so to be able to leverage new, in consultation with the Bank of Canada, new technologies like the public cloud, like AI, in order to increase efficiency and make e-transfer an even more valuable platform for Canadians to use for the next 21 years.
I am a bit concerned that it's easy to say exclude credit cards, but I would say that credit cards are just as much a payment system as any other system. And so that doesn't take away my concern about market dominance.
But okay, thank you, Mr. Van Buynen. Just one quick last question. You said we represent about 10% of all payments, excluding credit card payments. And does that include payments like I'm with Desjardins, I send money from one account to another account within my larger Desjardins account. Is that included in there or not?
Yeah, yes, it's included in there. There are fintech companies who
so
can...
the pie keeps shrinking, because I mean, to me, that's not a payment when I'm sending money from, my checking account to my savings accounts to my within the same institution. If that's included in the number of payments you're taking into account to first say 6%, now say 10%, I mean that's misleading by a landslide, Mr. Wilmot, I've got to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I misunderstood your question.
Okay.
It does not include an inter-financial institution transfer.
An intra-financial
right,
institution.
intra, because that will be on the financial institution's internal system.
Okay.
So it does not include that, and the Payments Canada report, I think, is quite clear on that.
Okay, we'll have a look at it. I'm reassured, because if it does include that, I'm like,
no.
Okay, ça va trembler, mais très brièvement.
Oui, ça va être en fait juste un nom, parce que la question...
Very quickly, yes, I just need a name. Who is the main competitor of Interac? I know that the question was asked, but I don't think I heard a name, so I just want a name. That's what I'm asking for.
Hopefully.
There are many different types of competitors to Interac. I think I heard someone just say Visa, but Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, Apple, Western Union, MoneyGram, and there are also local companies, Flinks would be able to
and maybe one day Bitcoin.
Well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilmot.
Thank you very much.
Have a great night. Thanks for joining us. Meeting is adjourned.